Ryu's thoughts race as he deflects a blow from hulking goblin. He had been designated a tamer, a role he believed was unrelated to fighting. For that reason, he had expected to live an ordinary, peaceful life. That belief held firm, right up until the day his reality was shattered. In a flash of movement, he leaps clear as the goblin falls, cleanly decapitated. The memory shifts. He is with his two childhood friends. The young woman, a mage, apologizes, explaining that they cannot take him with them on their journey. Ryu can only stare back, confused. As they turn their backs to him and begin to walk away, he reaches out a desperate hand. He pleads for them to wait, to not leave him, demanding to know why. The desperate plea echoes as Ryu jolts awake in bed, his hand still outstretched. He realizes it was just a dream, a painful memory replaying itself. His current life is far quieter, tending to animals on a peaceful ranch. His quiet morning is interrupted by a large farm animal licking his face. He playfully tells it to stop as a woman's voice calls out his name. He turns to see a maid approaching. She thanks him for his help the other day, gesturing to the small, cat-like creature he is holding and noting that it's feeling much better now because of him. Ryu smiles, replying that he's glad to hear it. She continues with a cheerful laugh, remarking that a tamer who can manage a ranch and even provide medical care is truly awesome. A shadow crosses Ryu's face as he thinks to himself that it wasn't his choice to become a tamer. Her words trigger another memory. He recalls that his two childhood friends were a hero candidate and a mage. His own path was set when his tamer skill was determined by the church, which is the only reason he now takes care of this ranch. He remembers how his friends pursued their grand destinies. The hero candidate joined the knight's order to learn swordsmanship, while the mage began studying magic at the church, all in order to support him. He thought of his friends, the hero candidate and the mage. While on their journey to save the world, the two of them had apparently achieved great success, celebrated by cheering crowds. In contrast, he stood quietly, looking down at his own gloved hands. Compared to their grand destiny, his own life felt small. His reverie was broken by the maid beside him. She asked if he was listening, then shared the news that his two friends would be returning to town soon. Startled, Ryu apologized, admitting his mind had wandered. Later, out in the quiet of the woods, the rustle of leaves filled the air. He let out a wide yawn, finally getting a moment's break. The news of their return weighed on him. He never thought they would come back, especially after the dream he'd had. His mind drifted back to his childhood, when the three of them used to play together. But before he knew it, he had been left all alone. He recalled how he would pass the time back then, taking care of the hunter's dogs. That was how he began using his tamer skill, playing with dogs and cats. The memory brought a pang of regret. He clutched his head, thinking that if only he had managed to tame the legendary Fenrer, perhaps he could have gone with them. But he quickly dismissed the thought as an impossibility. A sudden rustle in the bushes snapped him from his thoughts. He tensed, wondering what that was. People didn't usually come to this remote place. His eyes widened as he peered into the foliage, sensing someone there. From the undergrowth, a massive wolf emerged. Its powerful form, light fur, and dark-marked legs were unmistakable. It was a Fenrer, and its intelligent, piercing eyes were fixed directly on him. The legendary creature stood before him, its presence overwhelming. As Ryu stared, his gaze fell upon the Fenrer's dark-furred leg, and a single thought surfaced in his mind. It was black and beautiful. The sight triggered a memory from the recent past. He had been walking through the woods when he came across a different wolf, its paw caught in the cruel steel jaws of a trap. Kneeling, Ryu had tried to soothe it, promising to free it from its predicament. But as he reached for the mechanism, the frightened animal, driven by pain, snapped its jaws around his forearm. Ryu cried out in surprise, but his voice remained steady as he urged the creature to calm down. Ignoring the bite, he successfully pried the trap open, holding it aloft to show the wolf it was free. The animal watched him, its aggression seemingly subsided. Ryu then remembered the potion in his pouch. He carefully poured the healing liquid onto the wolf's bleeding paw, assuring it that the wound should now be fine. With the first aid rendered, he told the wolf to go on and get out of there. As the wolf disappeared into the undergrowth, Ryu sighed. The brief diversion was over. It was time to get back to work. He turned his back on the spot and began the walk back toward the ranch. The day concluded as it always did, with the sun setting over the quiet valley where his home and workplace stood. Later that night, lying in bed, Ryu's thoughts drifted back to the encounter. He found himself wondering if the wolf he had helped was able to return to its pack. With a yawn, he hoped the creature didn't end up alone, like him. Unseen by Ryu, in the depths of the forest, the very same wolf, limping but determined, finally rejoined its family. He was startled from his thoughts by a voice from his doorway. A large, white wolf stood there, bathed in moonlight, and wished him a good evening, commenting on the beautiful night. Ryu, still on the floor, stared in shock, realizing it was the same creature he had helped earlier that afternoon, and it could talk. Because the creature could speak, he deduced it must be a higher species, not just a simple animal. The wolf confirmed it had come with a question for him. Ryu, now sitting up properly, offered to answer if he could. His offer was a calculated risk. He reasoned that if he remained polite, he might avoid being killed instantly. The wolf seemed to notice, remarking on his courteous demeanor. With the pleasantries exchanged, the wolf got straight to the point, its gaze intense. It asked him directly, "Why did you help me?" He froze, contemplating the question that also encompassed why he had used a precious potion. He weighed his options, realizing the lie would likely get him killed, but doubting the creature would believe his honest answer. The two smaller wolves that accompanied her looked on nervously. As he hesitated, the wolf's patience wore thin. It leaned in close, its fangs bared, and warned him to answer quickly, stating it was not a patient being. The threat was clear. Under pressure, he blurted out the unfiltered truth. "It's because you were beautiful." He quickly elaborated that he thought it would be a shame for such a creature to die, and that was his sole reason for saving it. The two smaller wolves reacted with shock. Her reaction was not what he expected. The Fenrir leaned back, a hint of amusement in her voice. She remarked that he was truly interesting, noting that among the few humans who had ever saved her during some game, he was the first to do so for such a reason. Finding his answer acceptable, she declared that she had taken a liking to him. Ryu, bewildered by the turn of events, muttered to himself, questioning what the point of saving her was if this was the outcome. The wolf then asked for his name. He hesitantly introduced himself as Ryu. The Fenrir repeated the name, finding it unusual, and told him to dispense with the formalities, as she disliked them. The Fenrir, Ryle, begins to speak, her ears twitching as she addresses him directly. "Ryu, from now on, you're mine," she declares with a wide, toothy grin, adding that she will accept no objections. Stunned, Ryu can only ask what she means by mine. Ryle clarifies that she's taking him back to her home as her pet. The declaration leaves him utterly speechless. Before he can process this, Ryle's body begins to expand at an astonishing rate. She grows to a colossal size, shattering the wooden beams of the ceiling as she towers over him. Her eyes glow ominously as she announces their departure. Ryu stares in terror, realizing that not only can Fenrir speak, but they can also change their size. He stammers a protest, shouting that he at least needs to pack his things. His plea is ignored. Ryle gently but firmly clamps her massive jaws around his torso and bolts, sprinting at full power through the landscape. As he is carried along, Ryu can only think that he's going through something awful. Just as suddenly, the run stops, and she announces their arrival. Dazed and disheveled, he looks around and wonders where this place is. He looks up to see a brilliant, overwhelming light filtering down through the canopy of a dense, ancient forest. His eyes widen, all fear and exhaustion momentarily replaced by pure, unadulterated awe. Ryu stands at the base of a steep cliff under the light of a full moon. On the ridge above, a massive, majestic Fenrir stands silhouetted, flanked by a large pack of smaller wolves, all staring down at him. He recoils, a bead of sweat forming on his face as the realization hits him. He has been led into the territory of a pack of Fenrir. In the distance, the imposing figure of the pack's leader watches him and the younger Fenrir who guided him. His mind races, estimating there are at least 20, perhaps 30 of them. The huge Fenrir in the center is undoubtedly the boss. A wave of intimidation washes over him as he desperately hopes they have no intention of killing him. The massive Fenrir, the elder of the pack, bares his teeth, sensing this might be a serious problem. He addresses his daughter, his voice a low growl, demanding to know who the human is and why she brought him to their sacred ground. His daughter, Ryle, replies that she brought the human simply because she liked him. The elder roars in fury, bellowing that her reason is not a valid excuse. In that moment, Ryu understands the dynamic. They are parent and child. The elder's piercing gaze then shifts, locking onto Ryu. Panicked that he is now the focus of the leader's wrath, Ryu blurts out that he met her at the ranch where he works. The elder presses him, demanding to know where he encountered his daughter. As the elder looms over him, Ryu shouts that he saved Ryle when she was caught in a trap. The elder's aggressive posture falters for a moment, surprised by this new information, and he asks how they came to know each other. The sudden shift in questioning causes the palpable tension to drop. Ryle looks away, embarrassed. Ryu, however, becomes indignant, shouting that the elder's daughter could easily break a simple man-made trap and recalling that she had claimed to only be pretending to be caught. Ryle turns to her father and formally introduces the human. She explains that this is a tamer who can also provide medical care. Ryu is taken aback by her words. Ryle silently hopes that with this man's help, her grandfather's condition might finally improve. The elder Fenrir looks at Ryu with weary eyes. He explains that his illness is due to a lack of magic, a condition he admits is also his own fault. He concludes with grim finality, stating that he is at the end of his life and that a mere human cannot save him. He cut into their family dispute, having pieced together the situation. He surmised that Ryle had kidnapped him because she wanted to save the Fenrir's leader, questioning if their big boss was dying. He then formally requested to meet the ailing old man, recognizing that this might be his opportunity. He asked if he was supposed to check on him, seeking confirmation. His casual tone was met with a furious snarl from the large Fenrir, who called him an insolent wretch. Ryu stood his ground, stating plainly that Ryle brought him there for the express purpose of saving the old man. As Ryle watched with concern, the guard dismissed the human's potential, arguing that if it was simply a matter of old age, there was nothing he could do. Unfazed, Ryu insisted on at least being allowed to see him. Hearing his persistence, Ryle relented. She agreed to take him, noting that he had come this far, though she cautioned that his efforts would likely be pointless anyway. She led him to a large, dark den. Curled within was an immense, ancient Fenrer, its fur matted and its body still, sleeping a troubled sleep. As they approached, a single, weary eye cracked open. A deep voice rumbled from within, questioning their presence, and Rao respectfully announced their intrusion, addressing the beast as elder. She began to introduce the human beside her, but Ryu raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. He would introduce himself. He stepped forward, addressing the great beast directly. He stated that he was the tamer brought by the elder's grandchild and declared that he had come to cure his illness. The elder's voice was laced with skepticism, questioning the presence of a tamer and stating that his affliction was not something an ordinary human could cure. Ryu's confidence, however, did not waver. He affirmed that he could cure it, but that simply doing so would do him no good. He wanted to make a deal. His bold proposition is met with immediate hostility. The surrounding Fenrir pack bristles, their teeth bared in a collective, threatening growl. The elder snarls, accusing the human of deception and dismissing his words as meaningless. He suggests killing Ryu on the spot, but his daughter pleads for him to wait. The great beast's gaze remains fixed on the young man, demanding to know if he can truly cure him. With unwavering calm, Ryu simply states, "I can." This simple confidence seems to quell the elder's fury. The massive wolf settles and instructs Ryu to state his wish. The young man thanks him for his quick understanding. He looks the elder directly in the eye and makes his demand. "I want you to make me stronger." The elder questions his motive, to which Ryu explains that his desire is just like that of the granddaughter. He continues, explaining that she wanted to help her grandfather but was powerless, forcing a Fenrir to rely on a human. That desperation, he says, proves the sincerity of her wish, a feeling he also wants to convey. A memory surfaces of him reaching out helplessly as his two companions departed. He understands all too well the frustration of being unable to do anything. The elder Fenrir processes this shared feeling, his expression softening into one of understanding. "I see," he murmurs, as his granddaughter looks on in surprise. With his decision made, the elder declares that he will accept the deal, causing the other wolves to yelp in shock. Ryu asks what is required of him, and the elder states that it is simple. A calm smile spreads across his face as he reveals the method. "Bite my arm," he instructs, "and then you just have to drink the blood." To emphasize his words, he pulls back his sleeve and extends his bare forearm, offering it to the great beast without a trace of fear. He holds out his arm, urging the skeptical Fenrir elder to bite. As the younger Fenrir, Ryle, cries out for her father, the elder dismisses the cure as a lie, but complies, sinking his fangs into the young man's forearm. The moment his teeth break the skin, a brilliant surge of power erupts from the point of contact, engulfing them both in a blinding light. The raw energy flowing from him causes Ryu to grimace, while the elder and Ryle stare in utter shock. "Well, what is this?" the great beast exclaims, stunned by the sensation. He winces, admitting to himself that even though he anticipated the bite, it still hurts. Nearby, Ryle panics, wondering what is happening as the fresh wounds on Ryu's arm become visible. Despite the discomfort, a confident expression crosses his face. He tells the stunned Fenrir that it's complicated, just as Ryle senses the overwhelming energy and realizes in awe that the tamer's magical power is far beyond that of a hero. He begins to explain his unique condition to Ryle. In short, he possesses an overwhelming amount of magic power, but has no way to properly use it. If he were to try at full strength, his own body would explode, as it simply cannot handle the output. He continues, clarifying that unlike others who build their magic through training and practice, he was born with this immense power. To make matters worse, it continues to increase as he gets older. Ryle is taken aback by this revelation. From the side, the now revitalized elder, his body steaming with excess energy, remarks that such a condition is a total waste of potential. The great beast stands tall, his body brimming with renewed vigor. Ryle cries out in joy, "Grandfather, you look okay now." Ryu explains that the cure was effective because the elder's own magical capacity was strong enough to handle the influx. Having returned to a more manageable size, the elder rests his head near Ryu, his voice filled with sincerity as he offers his profound thanks. He listened as the great Fenrir elder, now fully recovered, reminded him of their deal. As payment for saving his life, the elder declared that Ryu would train with the pack. Ryu stared in disbelief at the sudden proposition. Ryle, the elder's daughter, immediately protested, shouting at her father-in-law that he couldn't possibly let a human join their pack. Her protests continued, warning that it was too dangerous. Another Fenrir voiced his agreement, adding that the human was far too suspicious and that his power could one day be turned against them. The elder, however, remained firm, stating that this was his way of expressing gratitude. The dissent turned hostile as one wolf suggested they should kill Ryu while they had the chance. The elder's voice cut through the tension with a single, sharp command, "Shut your mouth." At the threat, Ryle erupted in fury, roaring at the other wolf for daring to suggest they kill the one who had saved her life. Ryu, caught in the middle, felt a wave of fear at the tense atmosphere. He then overheard a whisper nearby, revealing that the elder, their grandfather, was the very first Fenrer, having achieved his strength through constant training and evolution. The elder paid the commotion no mind, speaking directly to Ryu. He confirmed that controlling such magic would require a great deal of power. Ryu, focusing, asked what the elder intended for him. He then laid out the terms of his offer. If Ryu were to live and train with them in the forest, he would be able to overcome his human limitations and become strong enough to command his magic. Ryu contemplated the immense weight of the proposal. He would have to give up being human, and he understood that if he were to fail in this training, he would die. His thoughts drifted to a memory of his two childhood friends. The desire to get closer to them, to stand beside them once more, solidified his resolve. With his purpose clear, he accepted the elder's offer. The great wolf nodded, pleased. Ryu clenched his fist, committing himself to the dangerous path ahead. He is presented with a gift from the younger Fenrer, Ryle, who casually identifies it as her own fawn. Ryu stares in disbelief, recognizing the object in his hand not just as a piece of a fawn, but a priceless artifact from a legendary creature. The sheer value and rarity of such an item leave him momentarily stunned. As he processes this, the Fenrir elder chimes in, declaring that he will take care of Ryu for a while. Ryle adds that the fawn should be helpful in controlling his immense magic power. This solidifies Ryu's resolve. His gaze hardens, and he clenches his fist, thinking of his two departed friends. He makes a silent promise to them that he will catch up soon, vowing to use this opportunity to become stronger. In the midst of what can only be described as hellish training, Ryu grits his teeth, panting heavily. It has been 1 month since he began this ordeal. Before him, a large pig-headed beast roars, its maw wide open, ready to attack. He recalls his strategy, feeling a surge of confidence. Pig-headed demon beasts are monsters with predictable movements. First, he dodges the creature's club. Then, while it's stunned from the missed swing, he targets its leg and follows up with a slice to its arm. As the beast loses its balance, he leaps, delivering a powerful, finishing blow to the back of its neck. From the side, Ryle, the young Fenrir, watches the strike land with a low growl. He lands softly, breathing a sigh of relief as the monster collapses behind him. Turning to his companion, he confirms that one is down and asks Ryle how her side of the fight is going. The result of their combined efforts is a large pile of defeated pig-headed monsters. Ryle sits atop the mound of vanquished foes, letting out a small, satisfied groan. Looking over the scene, Ryu sighs in exhaustion. He remarks that Ryle was so fast that she ended up taking care of all the rest, noting that it's just what he'd expect from a Fenrir. Later, while resting, Ryle comments that he is getting stronger. Ryu agrees that he can handle low-level monsters now, but feels he has a long way to go. He concedes that after a month of being thrashed by a pack of Fenrirs, he has improved from his first day, when he could barely even dodge. His training montage flashes by building stamina by being chased by Fenrirs, learning survival skills, and eating mildly poisonous berries. Ryle had dryly noted how helpless humans are, to which Ryu could only curse the harshness of the wilderness. He voices this sentiment to Ryle, admitting that it feels less like he's getting stronger and more like he's just adapting to survive. However, he reveals a new asset. More than anything, he now has a fong from the elder Fenrir. He smiles, noting that coming from the elder, the fong is unbelievably sharp. He looked down, a wave of guilt washing over him. He felt responsible for the elder's condition, believing it was his fault for pestering the old Fenrir for a name. Ryle, however, spoke with pride, declaring that the elder was her grandfather. She pointed out that being cared for by the granddaughter of the clan's patriarch was no small matter. She continued, explaining that her connection to the clan leader was precisely why others referred to her, a nameless girl, as Milady. Ryle then revealed the grave nature of the ritual. Naming a magical beast involves bestowing a part of one's own soul, an act that consumes a massive amount of magic power. The elder had attempted this for her, but the cost was too great, and he collapsed from magical depletion. Seeing her distress, Ryu forced a wide smile to reassure her. He urged her not to look so down, reminding her that she had done everything possible to save her grandfather. He added that the elder himself had told him not to worry and would surely prefer to see her smiling. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of another Fenrir. It approached with a message from the elder, its presence immediately drawing Ryle's attention. The messenger wolf fixed its cold gaze on Ryu, addressing him simply as human. It relayed that the elder wished to discuss his training and ordered him to come at once. Ryu noted internally that while the pack seemed to have warmed to Ryle, their animosity towards him remained unchanged. He hurried over to the elder, who was now sitting up and waiting with Ryle by his side. The great wolf welcomed him by name, and Ryu formally announced his presence. The elder seemed to sense Ryu's unease about his standing within the pack. He acknowledged that many, like the resentful messenger wolf, were unhappy with the favor being shown to an outsider. However, the elder dismissed their feelings, stating that he was the one who brought Ryu there. He then cryptically assured the boy that the rest of the pack would soon have no choice but to acknowledge him, leaving Ryu to wonder at his meaning. With a stern expression, the elder declared that a show of strength was the quickest way to resolve discontent. He would therefore give Ryu a trial. Success would mean becoming a true member of the Fenrir pack. As Ryu absorbed the weight of this proclamation, he asked what the trial would be. The elder's voice was grim as he delivered the verdict. Ryu's trial was to hunt a cockatrice, the rooster fiend bird, and he was to do it alone. The boy could only stare, utterly stunned. He reeled internally from the command. A cockatrice? That was a major beast, one that even B-rank guild adventurers hunted in parties. For a novice like him to be sent to hunt it solo, it was completely insane. As he grappled with the impossibility of the task, Ral stepped forward, pleading with her grandfather. "May I not offer my assistance?" she asked. The elder was firm. "You may not," he stated. "There is meaning in him undertaking this alone. This trial will be a catalyst for Ryu's greatest growth." The elder's words about growth did little to calm him, but then the old Fenrir added another layer to the trial. "After all," he observed, "it seems you still haven't truly mastered the power of the fawn." Ryu looked up, a flicker of confusion on his face. The fawn's power? He was referring to the large tooth he had been given. The elder's voice continued, explaining its true nature. "That fong is not merely sharp. It also possesses the quality of easily channeling magic power. Entrust your own power to the fong. Convey your will, and a path shall open before you." The cryptic instruction left Ryu more bewildered. The elder then added another riddle. "If you can realize that, then hunting a cockatrice will be a trivial matter." Ryu could only stammer in confusion. "Huh? A cockadoom?" The elder simply replied, "Well, it is fine if you do not understand for now." With that, the conversation was over. The elder gave his final command before the hunt. "Until then, rest your body, rest." The trial is set for sunset. The sky began to darken over the distant mountain where the beast dwelled. As the hours passed, the sun dipped below the mountain's peak, casting long shadows across the land. The time for the trial had arrived. In the twilight, a heavy thud echoed through the forest as massive, scaled talons slammed into the ground, kicking up dirt and debris. The creature had arrived. But to Ryu's horror, it was not him the cockatrice confronted. Ryle stood defiantly before the monstrous bird. From the cover of nearby bushes, Ryu and another wolf could only watch, stunned by her unexpected presence. The cockatrice let out a sharp cry, its malevolent eye locking onto the young Fenrir before it. As the monstrous cockatrice loomed, Ryle, the young Fenrir, did not back down. She let out a defiant cry, her body tensed and ready for battle. The creature responded with a deafening shriek of its own. From the nearby bushes, Ryu watched, a wave of nausea washing over him as he realized the gravity of the situation. From his hiding spot, Ryu quickly assessed the monster. He recalled its weaknesses, poor eyesight and a narrow field of vision, and he hoped an inability to fly. But its strengths were formidable, a petrifying gaze and a venomous snake for a tail. The elder, having appeared beside him, expressed concern, but Ryu was resolute, declaring he had no choice but to intervene. As Ryu prepared to move, the elder gave a stern warning, telling him not to die or get turned to stone. He emerged from hiding, fong knife at the ready. Ryu knew that facing both the main body and the snake tail at once was reckless. His strategy was clear: reduce the creature's number of attacks by dealing with one part at a time. As he lunged, however, the creature's reflexes proved faster than anticipated. The venomous snake tail struck at him, forcing Ryu to instantly change tactics and redirect his focus to the serpentine appendage first. His blade flashed, cleanly severing the snake tail. A triumphant thought crossed Ryu's mind. The first hurdle was cleared. His next objective was to immobilize the creature by targeting its legs. Before he could press his advantage, the main body of the cockatrice, now enraged, beat its wings, unleashing a powerful gust of wind that sent Ryu flying backward with a cry of pain. He landed hard and scrambled for cover. From the foliage, he observed the beast, which seemed to have lost sight of him. Realizing this wouldn't be easy, he decided to exploit its poor vision by attacking from its blind spot, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With a fierce cry, he burst from his hiding place, lunging towards the creature's leg. But as his blade swung through the air, he found nothing but empty space, a sudden confusion dawning on his face. His attack missed because the cockatrice was no longer on the ground. To his horror, the creature hovered in the air above him, its wings spread wide against the full moon, proving his earlier hope wrong. It could in fact fly. He stares up in horror as the massive wing beats the air. The realization hits him with full force as he shouts, "It can fly!" From his position on the ground, he understands his attacks are useless against an airborne foe. He wonders what he's supposed to do now, thinking he can only wait for it to descend. As this thought crosses his mind, the cockatrice unleashes a magical gust of wind that slams into Ryle, knocking her aside. The edge of that same gust slices past him, sharp enough to cut his skin. He recoils, shocked that the beast can use magic too. Nearby, Ryle calls out his name, asking if he is alright. He grits his teeth, lamenting that his own magic is barely enough for daily chores and completely useless for combat. He wishes he had a long-range attack. High above, the cockatrice lets out a piercing screech, seemingly mocking their helplessness. A thought sparks in his mind. He considers his limited options. The only cards he has left to play are the fong he holds and his own magic power. He suddenly recalls what the elder said about the Fong possessing the quality to easily channel magic. The instructions were to entrust his power to the Fong and convey his will. As another magical blast from the cockatrice slams the ground, he realizes he has no other choice. If he doesn't do something, he's a goner. He must try, even against a flying target. Taking a firm stance, he begins to focus his energy. Ryle watches from a distance, her eyes wide with astonishment as she senses his magic powers swelling to an unprecedented level. He remains calm, carefully channeling his magic into the Fong, little by little. He visualizes highly concentrated ink gathering at its tip, pouring all his might into the effort until the power reaches its absolute limit, the air crackling around the charged weapon. With the charge complete, he unleashes it with a shout. A massive, curving arc of pure black energy erupts from the Fong, slicing through the air directly toward the airborne cockatrice. The attack moves too swiftly for the beast to evade. Its eye, wide with shock, reflects the approaching wave of darkness just before impact. The creature is struck squarely by the blast of dark energy. Its form explodes in a shower of black feathers against the full moon. As its massive body crashes to the earth, Ryu stares upward in disbelief, the Fong still clutched in his hand. He can hardly believe his desperate gambit was successful. He is joined by Ryle, who joyfully confirms his victory. She declares that by defeating the cockatrice, he has successfully cleared the trial. A tired but relieved Ryu manages a weak affirmation, glad it's all over. Her celebration turns to concern as she sees him falter. The adrenaline fading, Ryu admits that he is completely exhausted and his body refuses to move. He then pitches forward, collapsing onto the dusty ground. He apologizes to Ryle, telling her he is about to fall asleep. She questions him in disbelief, asking if he truly intends to sleep right there. Seeing his state, she sighs with resignation, accepting that there is no other choice. As his eyes close, a single thought of profound relief crosses his mind. The trial is finally over, and he can rest. In the haze between wakefulness and sleep, he feels a gentle hand on his head. Believing it to be one of the wolves, he drowsily decides he will report the outcome to the elder later. The thought triggers a sudden alarm. He questions who could be touching him, realizing with a jolt that he should be the only human present. His eyes widen as he glimpses the outline of an unknown person. Before he can react, the mysterious woman with long black hair observes him. She notes to herself that it is no use. He has already succumbed to unconsciousness. She stands over Ryu's prone form as Ryle watches from nearby. Looking down at the unconscious tamer, she softly bids him to rest well. The Fenrer elder looks down upon the unconscious form of the young tamer, his voice resonating with pride. He declares that Ryu has performed splendidly. The words seem to reach Ryu even in his deep exhaustion, and a thought crystallizes in his mind. He is now truly one of the pack. A serene smile graces his lips as he lies on the ground. He has seized proof of his strength with his own hands. Ryu finds himself at the center of a whirlwind of youthful energy. A crowd of young Fenrir pups surrounds him, each vying for his attention. They offer him food, beg him to play, and eagerly volunteer to join his training, leaving the young tamer looking completely overwhelmed by his newfound popularity. Ryle observes the scene, remarking to him that he has become exceptionally popular since passing his trial. Ryu sweats nervously, admitting that while the attention makes him happy, it's also exhausting. The constant swarming from the pups, who now admire his improved hunting skills, has left his body aching and his clothes a complete mess. As he laments his tattered state, he feels a sharp, intimidating pressure. It is the piercing gaze of the elder, whose stare Ryu finds so intense that it feels physically painful. The elder's patience finally snaps. He growls at the younger Fenrir, telling them to stop being childish, before turning his irritation towards Ryu in the distance, shouting and calling him an idiot. Later, Ryu speaks with Ryle, who notes that the elder shows no mercy, as he holds the highest position within the pack. Ryu seems to accept this grim reality of the pack's hierarchy. His thoughts then turn to his ruined clothes. He considers using monster fur, but dismisses the idea, knowing he doesn't have the skills to craft clothing. He sighs, realizing his current outfit is at its absolute limit, and that it would be nice to buy new ones in a town. Ryle overhears his plight and suggests he ask her grandfather for help. Ryu mulls it over, concluding that whether he buys clothes or has them made, he will need money and must go to town regardless. He resolves to ask the elder for now. Just as he makes this decision, a furious shout erupts, commanding them to stop right there. The enraged, bandaged eyes of the elder glare down at them. The elder immediately accuses Ryu, his anger palpable. Another Fenrir joins in, convinced that Ryu is planning to sell the pack's information to humans and insisting he must be stopped. Ryu tries to placate them, agreeing that leaking information would endanger everyone. His grandfather's suspicion then falls on Ryle, as he asks her if she knows someone human. Ryle looks to the elder, who then muses aloud, questioning if he himself has any human acquaintances. Standing beside them, Ryu realizes with a sinking feeling that this will not be an easy misunderstanding to clear up. He counters the elder's distrust, proposing an alternative to a human craftsman. He asks if it would be acceptable to introduce an acquaintance of his who is a dwarf. The elder considers this, acknowledging that while dwarves are short, they are incredibly strong and skilled with their hands, perfectly capable of making clothes. Taking the elder's contemplation as a positive sign, he explains that his acquaintance lives in the land of the dwarf. He offers to go there and ask them for help personally, thanking the elder for even considering the idea. The elder agrees, but with a sharp, knowing grin, he adds a condition. To ensure Ryu doesn't speak with any other humans along the way, he declares that his own granddaughter, Ryle, will accompany him to keep an eye on things. Turning to his granddaughter, the elder asks if she's all right with the arrangement, adding that it is about time she saw more of the world. Ryu also looks to Ryle for her answer. Startled but resolute, she gives a firm yes. With the plan settled, Ryu observes that both his mother and grandmother, as he thinks of the Fenrer, are in a weirdly good mood. The elder chuckles and tells Ryle she'd better look extra cute for the trip. He then offers to teach Ryu a handy spell for carrying materials, suggesting he bring along monster parts to sell for money. He breathes a quiet sigh of relief, glad that he managed to de-escalate the situation and work something out. His thoughts turn to the future as he wonders what kind of journey to the land of the dwarf awaits him. Later, Ryu puts his new knowledge to use. He casts the storage magic the elder taught him, packing away the materials gathered from the previous day's hunt. With his preparations complete, all that remains is to set off. As he waits, Ryle calls out, confirming he has everything he needs. Ryu replies that he does and asks where the elder and the Oju, the young lady, are. Ryle tells him to look, apologizing for the wait and promising a surprise that will arrive any second. At that moment, a figure emerges from behind the elder. Ryu is left speechless. It is not a Fenrer, but a beautiful young woman with long, dark hair, prominent cat-like ears, and a matching tail. The girl looks at him shyly and asks what he thinks. The voice is familiar, sending Ryu into a spiral of confusion. He wonders why there is another human in the forest, how she knows his name, and what is possibly going on. He stares, dumbfounded, at the young woman with cat-like ears. The elder Fenrir confirms that the transformation into a human form was a success, intended to help her blend in. The sight sparks a memory for Ryu. He now realizes this was the human figure he glimpsed after defeating the cockatrice. She explains that while she has been practicing for a long time, her transformation was never stable before. She could only hold the form for a short while, but she had always dreamed of going out into the world with Ryu looking like a human. As Ryu processes this, the elder interjects with a serious request. He asks Ryu to give his granddaughter a name. Confused, Ryu questions the proposal, but the elder assures him that with his magic power, it is possible. He immediately understands the implication. For a human to name a magical being like her would mean she becomes his familiar. He weighs the benefits, such as telepathy and special skills, against the gravity of the commitment, recognizing it is not a decision to be made on a whim. The elder explains his reasoning. He tells Ryu that he owes him his life and that his granddaughter has long desired a name. After all they have endured together in the forest, he trusts Ryu completely with this responsibility, assuring him that both he and his granddaughter are fully aware of what it means. Ryu turns to the young Fenrir, who looks at him with earnest eyes. She confirms that, more than anything, she truly wishes to receive her name from him. Her sincere wish settles his hesitation. With a determined nod, Ryu accepts. He announces that he will form a contract with her as the elder watches from distance. He raises his hand, initiating the ritual. The contract will be sealed once he calls out the name, and she accepts it. With focus, he bestows her name, Ruri. As he speaks the name, a sphere of light manifests between them, signifying the formation of the magical bond. The contract is complete. Ruri closes her eyes, a blissful smile on her face. Ryu, however, begins to second-guess his choice, muttering her new name and worrying that a simple name might have been better. He wonders if she dislikes it, oblivious to her quiet delight. He sees the contract was a success, with the elder Fenrir looking on approvingly. Ruri, now in a new form with long black hair and prominent cat-like ears, beams with joy, declaring it perfect and thanking Ryu. Brimming with excitement, she bids a loud farewell to her family, announcing she is leaving with him. Having departed, they now travel together through the open country. As they walk, Ruri asks about the dwarf country they are heading towards. Ryu recalls the elder's description, a nation built at the foot of a mountain mine, which grew prosperous by crafting weapons and armor. As they continue on their path, Ryu slows his pace, a thought troubling him. He begins to speak, finding it a little difficult to voice his concern to Ruri. He asks why she's walking so close, her arm linked with his. Ruri seems surprised by the question, admitting she simply wanted to be affectionate. Ryu realizes with some embarrassment that this clingy behavior is new. She wasn't nearly this forward back in the forest. Their journey finally brings them within sight of their destination, a massive city fortified by high, imposing stone walls. Both Ryu and Ruri gaze up in awe, confirming that this is indeed the dwarf country. Just as they are about to head in, Ryu stops her. He apologetically asks Ruri to change back into her wolf form, explaining that it's because she doesn't possess an identification card. He elaborates that most countries require identification for entry, and she might be detained at the checkpoint in her human form. It would be much easier to pass if she is in her wolf form, as he can simply declare her as his familiar. They join the line for immigration inspection. When their turn comes, Ryu asks for permission to release the spell. With Ruri's consent, a soft light envelopes her, and she transforms back into her familiar Fenrir wolf form. After passing through, a young man with a large pack and a friendly demeanor addresses them. He asks if this is their first time in Fall Crown and recommends the city for selling monster materials and commissioning crafts. He then directs them to move forward as the next in line. The traveler introduces himself as Mark. Ryu responds in kind, giving his own name and stating that he is also a traveling merchant. He expresses gratitude and suggests they may meet again before parting ways. He steps up to a service window, where a bearded guard inquires about his business. Ryu explains his purpose, to sell some materials and to request custom tailoring. The guard, noting Ruri at his side, asks if she is his familiar, then questions if Ryu is registered with a merchant guild to be selling goods. In response, Ryu clarifies that he is not registered, explaining they had considered selling their goods through the Adventurers Guild instead. Understanding, the guard requests to inspect the materials, just to be sure. He readily agrees, asking for a moment to retrieve the items. The guard's eyes widen in surprise as Ryu presents a massive, pristine pelt over the counter. Before the transaction can proceed, another man in a formal uniform interrupts. He identifies himself as an official from the guard post and, after thanking Ryu for waiting, requests that he accompany him there. The sudden summons leaves Ryu visibly confused. Now seated inside the guard post, Ryu and Ruri face the official across the table where the large pelt rests. The official clarifies the situation, explaining that the reason for detaining him is not for any wrongdoing, but because they have something important to discuss. At the guard post, an official leans over a desk where a large, high-quality pelt is displayed. He addresses Ryu, stating that the country's higher-ups would be very interested in purchasing these hides. Ryu is taken aback by the proposition. For the country, he asks in disbelief. The official confirms it, adding that all the materials Ryu has brought are of exceptional quality. He explains that he wasn't planning to sell them just yet. His intention was to have a local craftsman inspect them first. He asks if that would be a problem, internally recalling that his primary goal was to visit an acquaintance of the Fenrir elder. The official seems to consider this. He then asks about the identity of this blacksmith Ryu intended to see, before revealing the name of the person they are about to meet, Door Crown. A heavy silence descends upon the room as Ryu, Ruri, and the official wait near a brick fireplace. The tense atmosphere makes Ryu uneasy. He asks the official if this Dwarf Crown is a dangerous person, explaining that he was only introduced by an old acquaintance and doesn't know much about him. The official looks down, thoughtfully repeating, "Famous, you say?" The official's demeanor suddenly brightens into a wide smile as he delivers the stunning news. Dwarf Crown is the king of this country. Ryu is left speechless. Walking through the city streets moments later, he is still reeling from the revelation. He never imagined the elder's acquaintance could be the king. A new thought strikes him as he glances at Ruri. He had forgotten that familiars can communicate via telepathy. He asks her what their next move is. A voice calls out, chiding Ryu for being late. He turns to see Mark, the traveler. Ruri telepathically suggests they should go to the guild first to exchange the materials they can sell, and that the king will explain things later. Ryu apologizes to Mark, explaining that the inspection of his materials took a long time. With a friendly wave, Mark replies that he had started to get worried. Ryu acknowledges that it took a while to get everything checked. The traveler agrees to lead the way, pointing down a street. As they walk, Ryu asks Mark if he knows the location of the Adventurers Guild. Mark admits he doesn't know the way, but expresses interest in the materials Ryu plans to sell. Ryu reassures him it's not an issue. His companion then spots a sign and points to the start, exclaiming that the guild is very close. In fact, it's right next door. Stepping inside, they find themselves in a bustling hall filled with people. Mark explains that the guild was strategically built near the country's entrance, as it's the first stop for many to report their completed quests. He continues, pointing out the 3 distinct reception desks. The first is for general requests from non-members, the second for adventurers reporting on quests, and the third, the purchase reception, is for selling monster and animal materials. Since Ryu is selling materials, Mark directs him to the third desk. Approaching the designated counter, Ryu decides to start by selling just one piece of a lower-grade material, planning to show the better items to the king later. The receptionist greets him, welcoming him to the Fall Crown branch, and invites him to present what he wishes to sell. With a heavy thud, he heaves a massive, fur-covered object onto the counter, declaring his intent to sell it. The item is revealed to be an enormous hide, so large it completely covers the counter and dwarfs the receptionist behind it. The sheer size of the material draws the attention of other patrons in the guild. The receptionist stares, momentarily speechless, before asking where on earth he acquired such a thing. She quickly recovers, stating that if it's the hide of a giant boar, they can process it, and then dashes away, asking Ryu to wait for a moment. Her departure leaves a ripple of murmurs through the onlookers. They comment on the impressive size of the catch and the quality of the fur. One person correctly guesses that it must have been produced using the storage magic they witnessed earlier. Mark, overhearing the chatter, turns to Ryu in disbelief. He urgently explains that a giant boar is a formidable A-rank monster, not some common animal. Ryu, however, appears completely unfazed, simply stating that it's just a boar's hide, seemingly unaware of its significance. He listens as the receptionist thanks him for waiting and confirms the price for the single piece of fur. The amount startles him, and he reflects internally that living in the great forest must have completely skewed his sense of value. The number echoes in his mind, 62 gold coins. He is stunned, realizing that this sum is enough to live on comfortably for quite some time. The receptionist presents a pouch, asking him to confirm the 62 gold coins inside. Still slightly dazed, he accepts it, assuring her it's fine and offering his thanks. His large payment draws the attention of the entire guild hall. A crowd, led by an enthusiastic Mark, swarms around him, shouting in amazement. Mark declares him amazing, suggesting that with such a fortune, he could become a state-employed merchant or even an S-rank adventurer. Amidst the commotion, he notices Ruri at his feet, puffing out her chest with pride. He silently questions her behavior, and she retorts telepathically that it's obvious, reminding him of who trained him. The realization sinks in for Ryu. He has truly become strong enough to defeat monsters that hold significant value. Clutching the pouch of gold, he gazes out over the city. For now, he has secured the necessary funds. A flicker of worry crosses his mind as he hopes for the best, acknowledging that the king remains his final, significant problem. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a stout man in a helmet rushes up a grand staircase, urgently calling out for Lord Dwar. He reaches the top of the steps and bows deeply before the figure waiting there. The man apologizes for the disturbance, insisting he has an urgent report, as a gruff voice from above demands to know the reason for the commotion. The subordinate quickly explains that a man has appeared, requesting Lord Dwar's expertise to examine some monster materials. He emphasizes their value, mentioning the hide of an A-rank monster specifically. Lord Dwar, the bearded guard, listens with arms crossed, his fingers tapping his arm as his expression grows serious. He sat upon his high seat, a figure of immense authority, as his subordinate presented the situation. The report concluded that the newcomer's sudden appearance with such valuable goods was highly suspicious, and the subordinate now sought a decision on how to proceed. The lord remained silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable as he mulled over the information. His deliberation ended. Now seen clearly, adorned with a crown that confirmed his regal status, he issued a simple, direct command. The man was to be brought before him the next day. His subordinate acknowledged the order without hesitation. The crown lord's eyes narrowed in thought. This stranger might prove to be of use. Meanwhile, unaware of the summons that had just been issued, Ryu felt a sudden sense of foreboding. He sensed many difficulties on the path ahead, steeling his resolve to not let his objective get away, no matter the cost. At the inn, the proprietor presents a set of freshly laundered and neatly folded clothes, Ryu's tunic. He gratefully accepts them, thanking her profusely and apologizing for having to borrow pajamas. The innkeeper kindly replies that she also took the liberty of patching the torn parts, particularly around the sleeve. She then asks what on earth he was doing to get his clothes into such a state, admitting that when he first arrived, she mistook him for a vagrant or a robber. Ryu forces a laugh, sweating as he thinks to himself that there's no way he can tell her he was training with a Fenrer. His mind flashes back to the previous day's chaos, realizing the king's messenger had arrived at the worst possible time, causing a complete misunderstanding with the adventurers at the inn. Just then, Ruri reminds him that he's heading to the castle today. He confirms, stating he'd made a promise at the guard post yesterday. With his purpose renewed, he clenches his fist in determination. All right then, let's do this. He sets off with Ruri, making his way toward the towering royal castle. Upon entering, they are greeted by an imposing corridor, lined on both sides by rows of silent, heavily armored guards standing at perfect attention. One of the guards escorts them forward, warning Ryu to ensure he does nothing disrespectful. Ryu internally remarks on the extravagant welcome for a regular person, as the guard informs him the king is waiting just ahead. The rows of guards remain perfectly still, their presence creating a palpable tension in the long hall. At the far end of the hall, Ryu and Ruri finally stand before the throne, where the king sits, awaiting their approach. He stood before the throne, taken aback by the sheer presence of the monarch. The king, a dwarf of considerable age and power, glared down with an intimidating aura that filled the grand hall. As he absorbed the sight, his mind instinctively assessed the man's strength. Based on his experience fighting formidable opponents, he concluded that this dwarf was incredibly powerful, not quite on the level of the Fenrir Elder, but certainly comparable to high-tier monsters. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he quickly dropped to one knee. He formally introduced himself as Ryu, a beast tamer, expressing that it was an honor to meet his majesty. Internally, he reminded himself to be extremely careful with his words. The king's voice echoed in the chamber, bidding him to raise his head. The monarch confirmed he'd heard about Ryu from the soldiers and asked if it was correct that he wished for clothes to be tailored from the hide he carried, a request Ryu had considered while looking at Ruri. His tone then shifted dramatically. The king leaned forward, his eyes narrowed, and bluntly asked if Ryu had stolen the hide. The accusation left the young tamer completely stunned. Caught off guard, Ryu internally fumed at the king's rudeness during their first meeting. He quickly composed himself and denied the charge, clarifying that the hide belonged to a monster he had hunted himself. The king met this claim with open skepticism, scoffing at the idea. He questioned how a mere beast tamer could hunt a monster in the great forest, which he called home to the cursed Fenrer. The monarch boasted that, at his level, he could identify materials even from a distance. Realizing his mistake, Ryu quickly corrected himself, stating that he wasn't alone and that a friend had helped him. The king's use of the word cursed made him question the king's supposed acquaintance with the Fenrir elder, and he decided it was best not to mention Grandpa at all. The king continued his interrogation, unconvinced. He argued that anyone who could venture into the great forest and return unharmed would surely be famous enough to have a nickname, and he demanded to know what kind of people his companions were. Ryu could only reply that they were just hunters, with no special names. The tense exchange left Ryu with a growing unease. Something felt off about the king's immediate hostility. Beside him, Ruri, in her small form, nudged him as if to calm him down. From his throne, the king muttered that the story sounded suspicious. He stood silently before the throne, his mind racing. The situation felt wrong. There were far too many armed soldiers present for a simple audience with one man and his familiar. He also couldn't reconcile the king's supposed acquaintance with his grandfather with his blatant poor impression of Fenrir. From the very beginning, the king had acted as if he were already guilty of something. Despite the palpable tension, the king made an offer. He declared that they would make an exchange. He would craft the clothes Ryu desired, and in return, Ryu would leave all the monster hides as payment. Ryu's internal doubts intensified, wondering if it was truly wise to ask this particular king for help. In response to the king's earlier accusation of theft, Ryu's resolve hardened. He stated firmly that he would not hand over the hides under such a premise. The king, seated on his throne, looked down in disbelief, questioning what he had just heard. The king's expression shifted to one of sharp indignation as he demanded to know if Ryu understood the gravity of what he was saying. Ryu met his gaze without flinching, his own expression resolute. With his Fenrir companion at his side, he made his position clear. Even if he was addressing a king, he did not trust him. Therefore, he had no intention of making a deal with someone like him. His blatant defiance shocked the royal guards. They bristled with anger, exclaiming how he dared to speak to their king in such a disrespectful manner. The king's face contorted in a furious roar, bellowing at Ryu for his insolence. Ryu remained calm, explaining that while he wasn't doubting the judgment of the guild chief who sent him, his intuition told him not to listen to the king. It was, he admitted, just a hunch. Enraged, the king shouted the order, "Arrest them!" The Fenrir instantly prepared to fight, but Ryu placed a calming hand on him, saying he would handle it. He knew that stirring up trouble with an entire kingdom was the last thing they needed. The guards swarmed in, their spears pointed at the pair. As the guards closed in, the king commanded them to be thrown in the dungeon. Ryu offered no resistance, stating that he didn't think he could win against an entire kingdom. From his throne, the king conceded that Ryu was at least wise enough to realize that. Following the royal command, a stout guard gestured with his spear, ushering Ryu and his companion out of the throne room. He simply told them to behave themselves as they were led away. He sits on the cold stone floor of the dungeon cell, the heavy footsteps of the guard fading down the corridor. He sighs, lamenting that he hadn't expected the dwarves to confiscate all of his valuable monster hides. Beside him, his Fenrir companion suggests that perhaps they should have fought back. His gaze falls to his pouch, a small measure of relief washing over him as he realizes the guards mistook the precious Fong inside for a worthless trinket. He reflects that, regardless, he couldn't bring himself to fight against someone who knows the elder Fenrir. His companion quietly agrees, though the situation remains grim. As he clutches the pouch, a sudden voice from the darkness cuts through his thoughts, startling both him and the Fenrir. He turns to see another prisoner, an older man with a weary face, who had been sitting so quietly in the shadows that they hadn't even noticed him. The man greets him as a new arrival and asks what he was thrown in for. Turning the question back on his cellmate, Ryu asks what crime the senior prisoner committed. The man sighs, asking if Ryu was also arrested for a similar offense before Ryu explains his crime was refusing to sell monster hides to the king. The older man's expression hardens, his eyes narrowing as he reveals his own charge with a single, chilling word: treason. A memory flashes through the prisoner's mind. He recounts how he had warned the monarch, telling him to stop a group of dwarves from hunting monsters in the great forest for rare materials, as they would be no match for a Fenrir. The explanation clicks into place for Ryu. He understands now why the king had referred to the Fenrir as cursed, and why he was so fixated on acquiring the monster hides. He muses that the king must have an incredibly short temper to imprison someone for giving simple advice. A wave of confusion hits him. He had assumed the man must be some incredible dwarf and a friend of the elder Fenrir, but the prisoner simply calls himself a fake. The man clarifies the shocking truth. The king on the throne, Lord Dolph, is the identical twin brother of Lord Dwar. The revelation stuns Ryu, who can only stammer in disbelief at the news. His fellow prisoner continued his explanation, revealing the insidious nature of the coup. Since Lord Dolph had always been a background figure, no one noticed the swap. He had secretly imprisoned the true Lord Dwar brainwashed his advisors and soldiers, and locked them away. This revelation prompted Ryu to ask the critical question: where was the real Lord Dwar? The prisoner explained that his own suspicions were aroused by the plan to invade the Great Forest, a line of inquiry that ultimately led to his current confinement in this very high-security cell. Their attention turned to the formidable door of their own cell. Ryu grimly acknowledged the serious security. The Fenrir added to the grim assessment, pointing out that their cell was far more secure than the others. It was an iron chamber with iron doors, and worse, it was enchanted with a curse that suppressed any power, rendering escape almost impossible. He quickly pieced it together. The man the prisoner knew must be the elder brother, the true Lord Dwar. With newfound resolve, Ryu declared their new mission: to break out the real king, not the imposter. He instructed the prisoner to stay back a little and told Ruri it was time to go. His plan was met with disbelief from the prisoner, who questioned how they could possibly break out of a cage that even dwarven strength couldn't dent. As Ryu walked towards the bars, Ruri beside him, he calmly replied, "It's not impossible." With that, he thrust his hand forward, reaching through the bars of the cell door with focused determination. His confidence was not misplaced. As Ruri began to glow with immense power beside him, the iron bars of the cell started to bend and shatter. "If it's us," he stated, clarifying the source of their combined strength. The prisoner stared in utter shock at the display, stammering as he asked who they truly were. Ryu extended a gloved hand to help the man to his feet, offering a simple, yet profound, introduction. "We're beast tamers and our familiars." Just that, now free from their cell, they faced the long, dark stone corridor of the dungeon. The prisoner immediately gave them their objective, pointing down the bleak hallway. Lord Dwar, he explained, was imprisoned in the cell at the far end. He turns to his new companion, asking if the older man can fight. Before the senior prisoner can give a clear answer, Ryu reaffirms their mission to rescue the true Lord Dwar, his gaze then fixing on the two guards standing watch at the end of the hall. As the guards notice them, the older man stammers in alarm. Ryu confidently tells him to stand back, promising to handle the situation. The man identifies himself as a warrior, but laments that without a weapon, fighting is impossible for him. Ignoring the man's hesitation, Ryu and Ruri surge forward, a blur of motion down the stone corridor. Their sudden charge provokes a shout from the nearest guard, who demands to know who they are and threatens their lives. As they close the distance, Ryu issues a quick command to Ruri: distract the guards so he can incapacitate them, but under no circumstances is she to kill them. One of the guards bellows and swings his polearm in a wide, aggressive arc toward the intruders. Ryu easily sidesteps the clumsy attack and delivers a swift chop to the guard's head, felling him instantly. He internally notes that this should be an easy win. The guard's movements are far slower and easier to sense than those of the monsters he's grown used to fighting. The second guard turns his attention to Ruri. Boasting that he can take down a wolf in a single swing, he reaches for his sword, only to find it stuck fast in its scabbard. He pulls in confusion, unable to draw his weapon. As the guard fumbles, Ryu exploits the opening, striking him down from behind. The older prisoner watches, stunned, remarking that his country's soldiers shouldn't be so weak. Ryu simply announces that the fight is over. With the guards neutralized, the three of them approach the large, reinforced door at the end of the hall. The older man gestures towards it, identifying it as their true obstacle. Ryu inspects the heavy gate, confirming it is solid iron and, more importantly, cursed. While his companion notes the curse seems ineffective on the outside, Ryu grasps the grim implication. It is designed to prevent anyone from opening it from within. Finding the cursed door impassable, he turns his attention to a nearby wall. With a determined shout, he smashes through the stone with a powerful blow, creating a new path forward as debris flies. Ruri and their fellow prisoner watch from behind. The dust settles to reveal a chamber beyond the shattered wall. On the floor, they find a figure whose feet are tightly bound with rope. Looking up from the bound feet, they see the captive in full, a stout, elderly dwarf with a magnificent white beard, sitting silently on the cold stone floor. Despite his bonds, he carries an air of authority. The dwarf's eyes snap open, sharp and piercing. His gaze fixes on the intruders, and a gruff voice cuts through the silence, demanding, "Who are you?" Stepping forward with Ruri at his side, Ryu introduces himself simply as a beast tamer. He then directly addresses the captive, asking if he is indeed King Dwar of the Dwarves. The dwarf confirms his identity, expressing surprise that a tamer could have reached this isolated cell. He explains that he was briefly looked after by the false king, and offers an apology on behalf of his foolish brother. The prisoner who accompanied them looks on as Ryu states that, more importantly, he has a request for the true king. The king asks why Ryu has come to him specifically. Ryu explains that he was referred by the chief of the Fenrer, who spoke of him as a skilled dwarf craftsman. With this, he makes his unusual request for the dwarf king to make him some clothes. The dwarf's expression hardens with suspicion. He declares that it can't be, as Lord Fenrir has no human acquaintances. Unfazed, Ryu states that if the king believes he is being deceived, he has proof. He presents a fawn given to him by the Fenrir chief and introduces his companion, Ruri. The king's skepticism vanishes as he recognizes the fawn. He concedes that it is the real deal and, apologizing for his doubt, agrees to grant the request. As he does, Ryu is stunned by a sudden transformation. He recognizes it as Fenrir's human transformation magic, a power he associates with another mysterious figure, as Ruri shifts into a humanoid form with dark hair, wolf ears, and a tail. With a sharp crack, Ryu's threads slice through the bars of the final prison cell. He turns to the freed dwarves, announcing that it's time for them to leave. Standing before the prison gates, King Dwarf thanks Ryu, confirming that the last of his men have been freed. Ryu, concerned, asks the king if he is all right. His immediate task complete, Ryu's expression hardens with resolve. He declares that their next step is to go and defeat the fake king who has taken the throne. However, King Dwarf stops him, insisting that Ryu and his companion do not need to involve themselves further. The king admits he was caught off guard before, but confidently states he will not lose in a direct confrontation. He clenches his fist, his gaze stern. The king reveals that the mess was caused by his own little brother, and he feels it is his duty as the older sibling to be the one to clean it up. To ensure their safety, King Dwarf gives them instructions for an escape route, a hidden path leading outside, found by turning left at the end of the hall. He promises to contact him again once it's over, and Ryu agrees to the plan. As Ryu and his companion depart, King Dwarf turns to his loyal followers. With a thunderous roar, he rallies them to action, shouting for them to take back the throne from the impostor. Leaving the dwarves to their rebellion, Ryu turns to the woman he calls Ruri, suggesting they head back to the inn. They walk away down a stone corridor as the sounds of the rallying dwarves fade. While walking, Ruri suddenly halts. Her ear twitches, having caught a faint, distant sound. She momentarily questions the directions they were given, but her focus is clearly on the noise only she seems to perceive. She turns to Ryu, asking if he can hear it too. She is certain she hears something, describing it as the sound of an animal crying. Ryu, however, appears completely unaware of the sound, expressing his doubt. She confirms the sound is just around the corner. While she can't be sure what it is, she advises Ryu to stay alert. He speculates it might be the cry of a monster kept for materials. Steeling himself, he decides they should proceed. With that, they race down the stone corridor, moving quickly toward the source of the sound. As they reach the corner, they peer cautiously into the next section of the passage, their expressions shifting to surprise at what they find. Instead of a fearsome beast, a tiny, fluffy creature lies on the cold stone floor. It appears weak and helpless. Ryu internally questions if it's just a bird, or perhaps a chick. He kneels down to inspect the creature, wondering aloud what it's doing there. Ruri observes that it looks incredibly weak and must have wandered in somehow. As Ryu's hand nears, the small creature stirs. Suddenly, without warning, the chick lets out a chirp and spews a startling burst of fire directly at Ryu, who flinches back in shock. Stunned by the unexpected attack, Ryu shouts in disbelief that the creature just breathed fire. Ruri, equally surprised, concludes that this is no ordinary animal. It's a monster. The small monster continues its agitated chirping, its tiny body trembling. Ryu holds up his hands placatingly, trying to soothe it by insisting he is not an enemy. Ruri watches, a concerned look on her face as the creature's tail whips back and forth. His gentle approach works. The creature calms down, now perched on his gauntlet. Ryu notes that it doesn't seem to be hurt. Ruri speculates that it must be starving, as there is no food in the passage. Ryu sighs, remembering that everything he had was confiscated upon his capture. Looking at the small, hungry creature, Ryu makes a decision. He tells Ruri they will take it with them, confident that it will be fine once they get outside and find it something to eat. The two then continue their journey down the dark passage. While he and the elder Fenrer sit at an outdoor table, the younger Fenrer, Ruri, voraciously tears into a large piece of meat. Holding the small cockatrice chick, Ryu tries to release it back into the wild, noting that it seems perky and should be able to survive now. The woman with long black hair watches, surprised by the chick's sudden energy. Instead of flying off, the chick chirps softly and nuzzles affectionately into Ryu's gloved hand. He remarks on its surprisingly large appetite for such a small creature. Seeing the display, the woman asks if he plans to make it a familiar. Ryu denies this, stating he only fed it, but she points out that the creature has clearly become attached to him. He looks down at the chick and relents, deciding that if it wants to stay with him, he will take it in. The woman predicts it will surely follow him and suggests they rest at an inn for the night to recover their strength, in case they need to help King Dwarl the next day. Later, in his bed at the inn, Ryu groans, tossing fitfully as the morning light begins to stream through the window. He lies awake, a strange pressure on his stomach making him feel heavy. He wonders at the cause, knowing it's more than simple fatigue. Still half asleep, he rubs his eyes and calls out, asking Ruri to move. He assumes the Fenrir must have climbed onto him while sleepwalking. A glance to the side, however, reveals the Fenrir sleeping peacefully on her own bed across the room. His eyes snap open in shock. The weight on his lap is the cockatrice chick, which has grown to an enormous size overnight and is now sleeping soundly on top of him. He bolts upright in bed, shouting that there is something on his stomach. His yelling startles Ruri awake, who drowsily asks what is happening. His eyes land on the enormous bird-like creature now resting beside him. He recognizes it as the chick from the previous day, but cannot comprehend how it could have grown so large so quickly. Ruri, now looking as well, asks what he means. She explains that while such rapid growth is rare, some species are known to grow by absorbing magic power. She speculates that the creature might have fed on Ryu's mana. Ryu, looking weary, admits that he truly does not understand how monsters work. Suddenly, the cockatrice lets out a sharp cry and flies away. At that moment, a voice from outside shouts that a soldier is calling for Ryu. Ruri turns to him, slightly annoyed, telling him he should have at least answered her if he was awake. Following the summons, Ryu and Ruri arrive at the castle. They are met by the king, who welcomes them, explaining that a soldier delivered a message. The king wishes to see them. The monarch then asks if the matter of the false king has been resolved, acknowledging that it was thanks to Ryu. He then calls out, asking how long someone intends to remain hidden. Turning his attention back to Ryu, the king announces that before they arrange for new clothes and a weapon for him, there is something important he wants Ryu to hear. The dwarven king, identified as Dwarf, addresses Ryu and Ruri. His face is a mask of regret as he bows deeply, offering a sincere and profound apology for what transpired. Ruri, confused, whispers to Ryu, asking why the king had to pretend. Ryu simply murmurs in understanding, noting that the king's aura has completely changed, making him feel like an entirely different person. King Dwar begins his confession, his voice heavy with shame. He admits that he was jealous of his brother, a man known throughout the country as its most skilled craftsman. Because of his brother's fame, all the work went to him, and the king, a fellow craftsman, was never even given the chance to handle the materials, a fact he found deeply humiliating. He continued his confession, explaining that he had lured his brother with false information about rare materials, locking him away in secret. By taking his brother's place as king, he could command soldiers and secure materials, allowing people to commission work without ever knowing the truth. His plan was working until Ryu appeared. He admitted that upon hearing Ryu was a tamer, his initial thought was to simply throw money at the problem. But then he saw the A-rank and S-rank materials Ryu had acquired, items of a quality never seen in the open market or even at the guild. In that moment, the king knew. The king's fist clenched as he recalled the feeling. It was as if Ryu could see right through him. Overwhelmed by a surge of anger, he lost control and acted horribly. Ryu's eyes narrowed, remembering the king's earlier refusal to work with him, his declaration of mistrust. Ryu finally understood the reason for the king's hostility. With his head bowed in shame, King Dwar offered another apology. "I'm truly sorry," he murmured. He quickly tried to reassure the king, insisting he hadn't done anything to warrant such an apology. But the king maintained that this situation arose partly because he failed to consider his brother's feelings. He then stated he had a suggestion. The king looked at him with resolve, declaring, "Let Dwarf make Ryu's outfit." Ryu was completely taken aback, questioning the king's words. "Brother? What are you saying?" The king explained that his brother, Dwarf, was far more skilled with his hands. He promised that Dwarf would create the best possible outfit for him. The king's hand trembled slightly on the armrest of his throne as he added that this act would also serve as part of his atonement. His mind drifted back in time. The king recalled that he had always known his brother, Dwarf, possessed a true, innate talent as a craftsman. A memory surfaced of a younger, brighter Dwarf proudly displaying a finely crafted knife. While he himself looked on, his expression clouded. His confession concluded with the final, painful truth. Because he felt responsible for the commissions he accepted, he never allowed his brother to touch any of the work. He hadn't realized, he admitted, that he was wounding his brother's pride with every refusal. He looked down, filled with regret, admitting to himself that he had failed as a brother. He realized that if he had only acknowledged Dwarf from the start and they had worked together, the current tragic situation would never have happened. Putting his regrets aside, the king formally addressed Ryu. He vouched for his brother's skill and pleaded for Ryu to allow Dwarf to take on the commission. Ryu simply agreed. His quick acceptance, however, prompted a question from the hooded craftsman. Dwarf asked why he would agree. Ryu stated that he had no complaints about receiving a quality outfit from someone acknowledged as the best craftsman in the country, and formally requested his help. He then added a condition, telling Dwarf that if he was truly sorry, he must prove it by living up to expectations. From beneath his hood, Dwarf asked if Ryu was really okay with this after all the terrible things he had done. From his throne, the king interjected, telling Dwarf that he was counting on him. The king then spoke directly to his brother. He reminded Dwarf that he had always wanted to be recognized as a true craftsman and urged him to prove it with his hands, not just words. He finished by expressing his faith, stating that he knew Dwarf could do it now. Extending a hand in a gesture of reconciliation, King Dwar proposed that this time, the two of them would work together to create something incredible. Overcome with emotion, Dwarf's eyes welled with tears as he enthusiastically agreed. King Dwar watched him, his own expression firm and resolute. The two brothers then clasped hands, sealing their pact. Dwarf roared with renewed purpose, vowing to make not just the best outfit in the country, but the best in the entire world, telling his brother to leave it all to him. With the matter settled, Dwarf turned his focus to the task at hand. Apologizing for the delay, he announced it was time to get to work, starting with a discussion of materials. Ryu, looking pleased, declare the case closed. As the two brothers walked side by side across the grass, their footsteps falling in unison, Dwarf remarked that it had been a long time since they were last home. Two figures, a young woman in armor and a young man with glasses, arrive on horseback near a rural homestead. The man, Taiga, remarks with a laugh that they are late because the townspeople wouldn't let the woman, the hero Tia, leave due to her popularity. Tia gazes forward, expressing her hope that their friend Ryu is doing well. Taiga agrees, noting it's been a long time since the three childhood friends were all together, and says they should go see him now. As they approach, their destination is revealed to be a house in ruins, its structure shattered and splintered. They find an older man standing near the wreckage. He is startled by their arrival, recognizing Tia as the hero Sama. Visibly shaken by the destruction, Tia immediately asks the man where Ryu is. Taiga, equally shocked, confirms that the ruined building was Ryu's house and pleads with the man to explain what happened. Tia, growing frantic, demands to know if something happened to Ryu, prompting Taiga to urge her to calm down. The man delivers a single devastating word: missing. Both Tia and Taiga are stunned into silence. He explains that Ryu has been missing for about 2 months. On the night of a full moon, a loud noise drew their attention, and when they investigated, they discovered the house had been destroyed. Taiga asks if there is any reason why Ryu might have disappeared. The man insists he has no idea, stating that Ryu was a hard worker who was beloved by even the farm animals and would never just leave without a word. The man continues, explaining that they initially found what they thought was livestock fur. However, a search inside the house revealed more animal fur, leading them to a grim conclusion: a monster might have attacked him. Tia's expression hardens as she listens. Taiga concedes the point, but notes they don't know where to start looking. Tia, filled with sudden resolve, declares she's going to find Ryu. When Taiga reminds her of her duty as a hero, she retorts that finding him is precisely why they must look, stepping forward decisively. Mounted on her steed, the young hero makes a solemn vow. She tells Ryu to wait for her, promising that she will find him no matter what. Her gaze hardens with grim resolve as she finishes her thought. Even if he is dead, she will not let the matter rest. Far away, completely unaware of his friend's vow, Ryu lets out a sudden, forceful sneeze. The woman beside him, Ruri, turns and asks if he has caught a cold. In the workshop, the elven craftsman Dwarf brings a hammer down with immense force. Despite his efforts and the roaring forge, the material he is working on remains utterly unscratched, repelling the blow with a sharp clang. His failed attempt draws the attention of the others gathered. Ryu, the dwarven king's subordinate, and Ruri all watch with concern as Dwarf stands back from his work. He holds up the object of their frustration, a large, pristine white fong, completely unmarked by the forge or the hammer. Ryu throws his hands up in exasperation, declaring that the flames he was using are completely gone, utterly spent in a futile effort. He slumps down beside Dwarf, lamenting that he cranked the flame's temperature as high as it could go, but the Fenrir's fong is simply too tough. Dwarf confirms the difficulty, noting that they've made hundreds of attempts with no luck. Hearing this, Ruri lets out a soft sound of realization. Dwarf explains that since it is a fong from the great Lord Fenrir, they would likely need flames from a magical beast of comparable power just to make a dent. Ryu, shocked, questions if such a species even exists. Ruri then brightly suggests using the flames of a Karura-ten. When Ryu looks confused, she clarifies that she means a Garuda. Dwarf elaborates that the Garuda is a legendary divine bird from ancient myth, said to possess dragon-slaying power, so it's no surprise Ryu hasn't heard of it. She turns to Ryu with a pointed look, asking if he's sure he doesn't know this Garuda, adding that he of all people should. The subject of her insinuation is then shown: the small, fluffy chick that Ryu had found in the cage. Ruri explains her reasoning to a stunned Ryu. She reminds him that he saw how much the chick grew in a single night thanks to his magic. A regular magical beast wouldn't grow so enormous so quickly. The implication hangs in the air, leaving Ryu speechless. He stammers, unable to immediately answer when the king's brother asks for the Garuda's current location. The craftsman continues, explaining that there is almost no doubt the chick was a Garuda, as only high-ranking magical beasts possess the power for such rapid growth. He reasons that a fair bit of time has passed, so it has likely fled the immediate vicinity, probably towards the mountain behind the castle. He eyes Ryu, warily asking if he's planning to search for it now. Having processed the news, Ryu accepts that the creature escaped. The king's brother adds that they cannot leave the castle unattended for long. Despite the warning, Ryu turns to him and Ruri, formally asking if they could search for the Garuda. The craftsman concedes that even though it's a gamble, it's one they must take for the chance to forge the fawn. Filled with renewed purpose, Ryu enthusiastically agrees, assuring them he remembers what the Garuda looks like and that they can leave the task to him. Sometime later, Ryu and Ruri stand together in a desolate, rocky wasteland. Ruri quietly observes that finding the creature will not be a simple task. He internally realizes his role is now simply to act as bait. Ruri seems to read his thoughts, explaining her theory that if the Garuda were nearby, it would have been drawn to his magic power. As Ryu wonders if his hopes were too high, She adds that it's not yet certain the creature isn't still around. Just as Ruri suggests looking elsewhere, she freezes. Wait, she urges, I hear something. She points toward the horizon, identifying a cry from that direction. Ryu's head whips around, his eyes wide with alarm. Over the rise, the source of the sound is revealed. A massive, reptilian beast has the majestic Garuda clamped in its jaws, the divine bird's halo flickering as it struggles violently. From their vantage point, Ruri spots the struggle. There it is, she exclaims, but her tone quickly shifts to concern. She points out that something is wrong. The way the Garuda is flapping its wings is strange. Seeing the creature weakened on the ground, Ryu realizes it might be injured. He shouts to Ruri, pleading for her help. She responds instantly, ready to intervene. He stood with Ruri, gazing down at the rescued Garuda resting on a large pillow. He remarked that it was surprisingly close by, as he had expected it to have flown much farther. A thought then occurred to him. Perhaps the creature didn't have any parents. The creature continued to sleep peacefully. Ruri's voice added to his theory, suggesting that since it was all alone when they first found it, the Garuda might not have known where to return to. She concluded that for now, they just had to wait for it to wake up. King Dwar, standing nearby, added reassuringly that it was just a scratch and the creature was doing fine. He then turned to Ryu, asking for an update on the Garuda's condition, but Ryu seemed lost in thought, pondering the implications. His gaze remained fixed on the resting bird. The same thoughts circled in his mind. It was found so close, when it should have been much farther away. The possibility that it was an orphan felt more and more certain. As the Garuda slept, Ruri's voice once again pointed out that it was completely alone when they found it, questioning aloud if it truly had no parents. She then stated that their only course of action was to wait for it to awaken. The king, satisfied that the creature's wound was minor, repeated his question to his still distracted Ryu, asking how the Garuda was. His attention was suddenly captured by a faint sound. The Garuda stirred, letting out a soft peep. Ryu reacted instantly, noting that it was awake, though he privately wondered if the creature would be willing to cooperate with them. The small creature suddenly erupted into a panic. It flapped its wings wildly, chirping in distress as it scrambled onto Ryu's chest. Startled, Ryu cried out. King Dwar watched the commotion with concern, asking if the Garuda was all right and telling it that it could rest longer if needed. As he tried to manage the frantic bird, Ruri approached, calling his name. He held the Garuda close, attempting to soothe it. He reassured the creature that it was safe and urged it to calm down, wondering if it was still disoriented. The Garuda's peeps softened to a quiet, questioning sound. He looked up, a bead of sweat on his temple, bewildered by the creature's behavior. Ruri stared intently at the two of them, then made an unexpected proposal. She asked why he didn't make this Garuda his familiar. He listens as Ruri explains her reasoning. Making the Garuda his familiar would be for the creature's own good. She believes it has grown attached to Ryu and, if left to its own devices, would likely run into trouble again. Ryu questions why she thinks this. Before he can argue, Ruri suggests they let the creature decide for itself. From the window, King Dwar agrees, adding that they will need the Garuda's cooperation one way or another. Taking the advice, he turns to the majestic bird perched before him. He directly addresses the Garuda, asking it to lend them its strength and come with them. He continues, clarifying that while he wants the Garuda by his side, the choice is ultimately its own. If it wishes to leave, he assures it there will be no hard feelings. In response, the Garuda makes its decision, gently touching the top of Ryu's head with the tip of a single wing feather. The creature then settles onto his outstretched arm. Ryu thanks it, a look of wonder on his face. Ruri, delighted, suggests they should give it a name right away. Their private moment is interrupted by King Dwar, who declares that a familiar contract with a Garuda is an incredibly rare opportunity. He proposes they hold a ceremony in the town square for everyone to witness. Following the king's decree, a massive crowd quickly gathers in the town square, their attention fixed on the small group in the center. Within the throng, the traveler Mark asks a nearby guard what is happening, wondering aloud if so many people usually show up without any prior notice. The guard seems just as confused. At the center of the commotion, King Dwar apologizes, noting that even a king stepping out in public tends to draw this kind of attention. Ruri asks if they should reschedule, but Ryu, flustered, insists they just get it over with. He looked toward the divine beast perched on his arm and announced that with the giving of a name, their familiar contract would be formed. The Garuda chirped with excitement. Ryu explained that this was a ritual to become family, and he would be happy if the creature thought of them as its family, too. Seeing no issues with the arrangement, he steeled his resolve. All right then, he murmured, here we go. With a gentle smile, he addressed the creature directly, bestowing its new identity. From this moment on, your name is Karen. The instant the name was spoken, a violent vortex of light and power erupted from the ground around Karen, shocking the onlookers. The sudden magical phenomenon caught everyone by surprise. Ruri cried out Ryu's name in alarm, while he stood stunned, realizing this was completely different from the contract he'd formed with her. As the light intensified around the divine beast, Ryu understood what was happening. He recognized it as evolution, a trait unique to magical beasts, and realized Karen was evolving. Ruri explained that this evolution was the process of attaining the form and power a creature truly desires. She surmised that it was happening now because Karen genuinely wished to become a source of strength for Ryu. The light then coalesced into a large, smooth egg. Cracks began to spiderweb across the egg's surface. Ruri admitted she had no idea what form it would take, but suggested they prepare to welcome it properly. Ryu agreed with a determined nod. With a final, explosive burst of light, the egg shattered completely. Ryu thrust his hand forward, his face alight with anticipation, and called out to his new partner. Karen, come on out. He watched, stunned, as the light from the shattered egg faded, revealing not a beast, but a young woman who immediately embraced him. Her form was humanoid, yet she possessed small, feathered wings and a faint halo. As she pulled back slightly, her eyes fluttered open, revealing a gentle, knowing gaze. In the background, Ryu and Ruri could only watch, speechless at the transformation. She stood before them, a radiant figure, and addressed Ryu directly, calling him Papa. With a bright smile, she explained that it took some effort, but she managed to take on the same form as him. Ryu stammered her name, asking if she was all right, completely taken aback when she repeated the title. He struggled to process the idea, realizing she truly saw him as family. Her expression softened as she explained her reasoning. She had always been alone. Ryu, still trying to understand, had a feeling this might happen, but asked why she specifically chose a human form. She recounted her lonely life on the run. From a moment she was born in this very town, she had no mother or friends. She would search for her mother, but whenever people found her in her small, bird-like form, they would scream about a monster appearing, and soldiers would give chase. She affirmed that everything changed on the day that he and Sis helped her. Ryu looked towards Ruri, a wave of understanding washing over him. He finally grasped why Karen had been so startled by the mere mention of soldiers back then. In her divine bird form, Karen expresses her profound happiness to Ryu and Ruri. She confesses that it was the first time anyone had ever been kind to her, and because of that, she came to love them both so much. More than anything, she wished she could become the same as them. The moment of peace is broken by the chaotic aftermath of the battle. Ryu, looking around frantically, shouts for anyone alive to answer. He calls out specifically to Ryu, asking if he is unharmed, before seeing his companions nearby and expressing his relief. His focus shifts as he realizes he completely forgot about King Dwar and the others in the heat of the moment. He turns to Karen, now in a human form, and asks her to put out the flames still raging around them. She readily agrees. As the fires subside, King Dwar storms over to Ryu, shouting his name. The king demands to know what Ryu meant by saying it all went well, pointing out that he had just caused an incredibly dangerous situation. The king is absolutely astounded by the display of power. He marvels that such a thing is possible, noting that this transformation is characteristic of a divine bird, truly different from other magical beasts. Ryu explains that the Garuda evolved and took on a human form. The king's curiosity then shifts, and he points towards Ruri, asking who the girl is. King Dwar turns to the gathered townspeople, assuring them that his soldiers will explain everything and that they need not worry. He then tells Ryu they should return to the workshop to test the materials they've gathered. He confirms that as long as the material can handle flames, forging the sword will not be an issue. With the immediate crisis handled, the group, consisting of King Dwar, Ryu, Karen, and Ruri, walks away from the site of the battle, heading back towards the city's workshops. Watching them depart from a distance is the young traveler, Mark. He holds a single, large feather drop during the fight, and reflects to himself that Ryu seems to be quite different from other humans. 1 month later, Ryu proudly presents a new piece of armor to King Dwar and Ruri. He declares it his finest masterpiece, a dwarven-made leather armor crafted from the excellent materials provided. He explains that it renders fire and ice attacks ineffective and, furthermore, possesses a heat fluctuation nullification effect. The king's brother, Dorf, elaborates on the armor's properties. He explains that they imbued it with this special effect by weaving in Karen's molted feathers. He reveals that Garuda feathers possess both heat resistance and heat absorption properties, making them an extraordinary crafting component. The craftsman, King Dwar's brother, informs Ryu that after keeping him waiting, only the sword remains to be delivered. Ryu expresses his immense gratitude as the craftsman explains that the previously delivered armor also offers protection against both heat and cold, making it exceptionally useful. With a soft click, the finished sword is presented, its dark scabbard lying beside the gleaming, unsheathed blade. The sword is complete. Ryu examines the blade, noting its unusual single-edged design. A wave of realization hits him as he identifies it as the sword forged from a Fenrer's fawn, and he marvels that the craftsman was truly able to create it. The craftsman explains that it is a special type of short sword known as a wakizashi, a style he learned from someone in an eastern land. He clarifies that the single-edged design significantly improves its cutting power. Ryu turns to Karen, who stands beside him in her human form, and thanks her for her part in its creation. He then declares that the sword was forged exclusively for Ryu. He explains that while the creator usually names their work, he would be deeply honored if Ryu himself would bestow a name upon the wakizashi. Ryu is taken aback by the sudden request, his mind going blank as he struggles to think of a suitable name. On his shoulder, Karen, in her small bird form, looks on. As he struggles, Ruri, ever straightforward, suggests naming it Wolf. Ryu considers her input, holding the blade and quietly accepting the name Ro. With the name settled, the craftsman proposes they conduct a test cut before relying on the blade in real combat. Ruri eagerly agrees, and Karen chirps with excitement, anticipating another impressive display from Ryu. They move to a balcony overlooking the public square, where a large crowd has gathered. King Dwar observes the turnout, wryly commenting that the story of the last naming ceremony must have been embellished in the retelling. The king apologizes for the public venue, explaining that any incident at the castle would cause an uproar. He assures Ryu that soldiers are keeping the crowd at a safe distance. Ryu accepts the arrangement, and with that, the king gives the signal to begin. As he stands ready, an announcer's voice booms across the crowded plaza, heralding the start of the event. He proclaims the official unveiling of Wolf, the new sword forged by King Dwar himself, and the crowd murmurs with anticipation. King Dwar then gives Ryu his instructions. He tells the young tamer to draw the sword and unleash all of his magical power into the sky, explaining that this will reveal the true extent of the blade's capabilities. Ryu simply acknowledges the command. He grips the hilt, contemplating the king's order to use all his might. He realizes that such power could cause terrifying collateral damage, even at a distance. He resolves to mitigate this by focusing the entire blast on a single point as much as possible. With his decision made, he draws the blade in a single, swift motion. A torrent of energy erupts from the wakizashi, shooting straight up into the sky as King Dwar and his companions watch from below. The released power tears a massive rift through the heavens, parting the clouds as if the very fabric of the sky has been sliced open. The sheer scale of the display leaves everyone stunned. Ruri and the black-haired woman stare upward with wide-eyed shock, and even Ryu, who unleashed the attack, is left with an expression of open-mouthed disbelief. Their astonishment is echoed by the crowd below, which erupts into a roar of confusion and awe. Shouts of "insane" and "what was that?" fill the air, with many attributing the incredible feat to a weapon forged by the king. Ryu examines the sword, remarking that its magic conductivity is on another level, truly worthy of a Fenrir's fawn. Karen excitedly praises him, calling him Papa and exclaiming how amazing it was that he sliced the sky. King Dwar offers a simple, "not bad at all," but Ryu looks unsettled, questioning if such a display was really okay. Before he can voice his concerns, the king's brother notes that no further adjustments will be needed for the weapon. His thought is cut short as a man in the crowd points frantically toward the sky, shouting for everyone to look. Following the man's gesture, Ryu looks up. His eyes widen in horror as a colossal, red-scaled dragon descends from the rift he created in the sky. A dreadful realization dawns on him. Don't tell me. He stood frozen, flanked by his companions. The elder Fenrer, Ruri, the enigmatic woman in black, and the divine Garuda all stared upward, their collective disbelief hanging in the air. Below them, the city had ground to a halt, a state of utter paralysis. The word escaped their lips, fragmented by shock. Ryu collapses to the ground, his face a mask of terror as he stares into the sky. A massive, dark silhouette of a dragon soars overhead, and he can only stammer the creature's type in disbelief. The sound of its powerful wings echoes as Ryu, the Fenrir Ruri, and King Dwar continue their trek along a barren ridge. Their progress is suddenly halted. A colossal, dark, clawed foot slams into the ground directly before them, shaking the very earth they stand on. From the impact, a group of 4 individuals materializes. Their leader, an older man with long, light-colored hair and a regal, fur-trimmed coat, regards Ryu with a knowing look. He greets the tamer by name, remarking that it has been some time. He is left speechless, utterly baffled as to how this stranger knows him. Beside him, Ruri cries out in recognition, identifying the man as her grandfather. The man, now confirmed to be the Fenrir elder in a human guise, simply smiles, acknowledging Ryu's confusion. He then playfully teases the boy, correctly guessing that Ryu was just thinking about how young Ruri's grandmother appeared. The rest of the Fenrir family, her stern father, her youthful mother, and her enigmatic sister, stand with him, all in their human forms. While Ryu tries to process this stunning revelation, King Dwar steps forward to greet the elder formally, addressing him as Lord Fenrir. After the elder returns the pleasantry, Ryu finds his voice, stating that he has a small favor to ask of him and his family. The elder acknowledges the request, mentioning he also has much to ask, but suggests they save their conversation for later. His expression turns grave as he warns that a troublesome fellow is about to awaken. As he speaks, a terrifying image fills the mind's eye, a pair of malevolent, glowing eyes and a monstrous, fanged grin splitting the darkness. The elder gives the entity a name, the sorceress evil dragon. The Fenrir elder reveals the nature of the sorceress evil dragon. It is a colossal, chalk-white beast with 3 serpentine heads, capable of using every form of magic. He explains that long ago, they failed to subjugate it, because it could spawn new kin from its own wounded flesh and blood. Left with no other choice, they sealed it away. Now, word has come that the seal is about to break, forcing them to prepare for battle. Ryu is left speechless, contemplating the monstrous being described. The elder then turns to him, formally requesting that Ryu and his companions lend their strength to the cause. He stresses that their opponent is formidable, and they require all the fighting power they can possibly gather. Ryu looks on, stunned by the direct plea. He continues, attempting to bolster Ryu's confidence by praising his abilities. The elder asserts that after training under a Fenrer, Ryu can fight better than most. Ryu, however, is still grappling with the reality of the situation, internally questioning if he can truly survive a fight against a dragon. Seeing Ruri's determined expression as she pledges to help her grandfather, and spurred on by the elder's confidence, Ryu agrees to the request. He then asks where this beast, which the elder calls Dhaka, is located. The elder replies that it is in the Dragon Kingdom. As they speak, a new voice from above remarks on the unusual sight of a Fenrer talking with a human. Ignoring it for the moment, the elder declares that time is precious and they must go immediately, promising to discuss the details later. Ryu is left confused, wondering how they are meant to travel. His unspoken question is answered as a colossal, light-scale dragon lowers its head to meet his gaze. The immense creature looks down upon him, its voice echoing as it asks, "Are you Fenrer's disciple?" Ryu recognizes the dragon from before and is stunned by its sheer size and its ability to speak. The Fenrer elder formally introduces the beast as his sworn brother, an earth staff dragon. The revelation sends Ryu's mind reeling. He struggles to comprehend how the world works when even the Dwarven King is acquainted with such a creature. With King Dwar's assent, the group prepares to leave. The earth staff dragon announces it will take them to the Dragon Kingdom, noting that their presence is beginning to cause a commotion. It readies itself for departure, its massive form dwarfing the surrounding buildings. As they take to the sky, they are watched from below by two unfamiliar figures. A young woman with a high ponytail observes their ascent with keen interest, remarking to her companion, "Oh, so you're the one who named this child." Aboard the great dragon, the group travels onward. Ruri's mother observes Ryu with a keen eye, remarking that taming both Ruri and the Garuda should have completely depleted his magic and killed him. She finds his survival deeply interesting, her thoughts trailing to his mother. Her words trigger a violent reaction from Ruri's father. He erupts in fury, misinterpreting the situation entirely. Roaring that Ryu has stolen his daughter and is now cheating on her, he vows to punish the bewildered young man right then and there. Before he can act, his wife grabs him, sharply telling him to stop. She clarifies that Ryu and Ruri were together for a month, and that Ruri has grown fond of both the tamer and Karen, the young Garuda. Ruri chimes in to support her mother's explanation. She describes how Karen was constantly by her side, whether for meals or baths, overjoyed to finally have a little sister. Ryu quietly reflects that if anything, it was Ruri who was inseparable from Karen. The matriarch's attention then softens as she turns to Karen, asking if she feels lonely without parents. Karen quickly shakes her head, explaining that Papa Ryu and Big Sis Ruri are very kind to her, which brings a gentle smile to the woman's face. Her husband, now composed, speaks to Karen with surprising gentleness. He acknowledges that while Ryu is young himself, it is always better to have more people to rely on. He then declares that if she is Ruri's little sister, then she's like a daughter to them as well. He formally extends the offer, telling Karen that while she may be hesitant, she can think of their entire family as her own. Ruri and her mother look on, their expressions full of warmth and agreement. Overwhelmed by the unexpected acceptance and kindness, Karen's eyes fill with tears. Sometime later, as Ryu gazes out in wonder, the Earth Staff Dragon's voice rumbles, announcing that they are almost at their destination. His gaze falls upon a breathtaking sight, the vast, sprawling capital of the Dragon Kingdom, nestled within a great valley below. He looked up at the great dragon, Midgardsormr, who explained that while the Dragon Kingdom's castle and town constituted the king's entire territory, its small size made it an unfavorable place for a being of his scale. Ryu processed this, realizing the scope of the kingdom before them. The dragon continued, clarifying that while dragons and the half-human dragonkin coexisted well, the infrastructure was built to a human scale. This meant a regular dragon, like himself, needed to assume a human form to navigate the city. Ryu mused on the inherent difficulties that must arise from differences between species. With that understanding, the party advanced towards the imposing main gate of the Dragon Kingdom's capital. Ryu turned to the massive creature and offered his thanks. In response, Midgardsormr simply stated it was time for them to proceed. As they walked, the dragon transformed, revealing a tall, elegant man with long, light-colored hair who now led the way. He promised to guide them, noting with a smile that even in his human form, he was huge, at least 2 meters tall. Ryu and the others followed this new figure. His approach was met by 2 guards standing sentinel before the gate doors. One, a young man with small horns, and the other, a man with a more weathered face, stood rigidly at attention with their polearms. The guards immediately recognized him, offering a respectful welcome back to Lord Midgardsormr. He acknowledged them with thanks for their hard work. Seeing the large retinue, one guard asked if they were reinforcements. Midgard Sormer corrected him, introducing his companions as a sworn brother and the young ones of the Fenrir clan. The guard was taken aback, realizing he was in the presence of the legendary magical beast himself, a fact he found most reassuring. The horned guard's attention then shifted. He inquired about the human in their midst, noting that he'd heard this kiddo was Fenrir's disciple. Ryu, with Karen on his shoulder, looked up, startled to find himself the focus of the conversation. He could only manage a strained smile as he overheard their doubts. The guards openly questioned how a human could be a disciple, with one admitting he could hardly imagine a human being a viable asset in battle. Ryu resignedly accepted that this was indeed what most people would think. He stood by as the situation with the guards escalated. Ruri, sensing the tension, quietly asked Ryu why the guard was getting so angry, wondering if he felt his strength was being looked down upon. The Horned Dragon King guard tried to de-escalate, insisting they meant no disrespect, but his partner erupted, furiously accusing them of implying that the warriors he trained were weak. The guard's face contorted with rage. He declared that if they were made to understand Ryu's true strength, they would have no complaints. With a grimace, he decided on a course of action. His decision made, he muttered, "Very well," leaving Ryu utterly confused. The guard then pointed decisively at the young tamer and bellowed an order to fetch his superior, issuing a challenge. If Ryu could defeat this superior, his participation would be acknowledged. In response to the summons, a high-ranking Dragonkin commander appeared, his stern and imposing presence immediately filling the space. Moments later, Ryu found himself standing opposite the commander in a wide courtyard, both men holding swords as they prepared for an impromptu duel. As the two faced off, Midgardstormer stepped forward in his human form, volunteering to witness the match. From the sidelines, Ruri shouted encouragement to her, "Papa," while simultaneously warning Ryu that he would answer to her if he lost. Ryu, sweating under the pressure, could only wonder how things had escalated so quickly. The commander sized him up, remarking coolly that he looked like an ordinary human, but nevertheless accepted the duel. Midgardstormer then laid out the terms. The match would be decided if one of them fainted or retired. With the rules set, Midgardstormer gave the signal to begin. The commander's expression hardened as he drew his blade, declaring that as a military commander of the Dragon Kingdom, he could not afford to lose and would not be holding back. He was true to his word. The commander lunged forward with explosive speed, his sword a silver blur aimed directly at a startled Ryu. Forced onto the defensive, Ryu struggled to parry the furious assault. He gritted his teeth, shocked by the sheer force of the attack. Each blow was incredibly heavy, threatening to overwhelm his guard. He strains under the force of the Dragonkin commander's powerful overhead strike, their blades locked. The commander bears down with a confident smirk, forcing Ryu onto the defensive. He grits his teeth, realizing that simply defending will not be enough to face a true threat like Dhaka. The commander taunts him, asking what's wrong. Ryu knows he must force his opponent to retreat, but with the commander's heavy strikes and superior speed, he sees no opening to land a decisive blow. Acknowledging that he stands no chance in a pure contest of sword skill, Ryu decides on a new strategy. He thinks that going all out would be disastrous, so he resolves to use only a minimum of power. He plans to imbue his blade with just enough magic to make the commander falter on impact, creating an opening. With his plan set, he focuses his gaze, steeling his resolve to land the decisive, magic-infused hit. As their blades clash once more, a spark of magical energy ignites at the point of contact. The infused power is overwhelming. The commander's sword shatters into countless fragments, the force of the impact stunning him. In the stands, Ruri, Karen, and the king's brother look on in absolute shock. Ryu himself stares in wide-eyed horror, a cold sweat forming on his brow. He realizes with a jolt that he is still not used to handling the Fenrir's power and has completely misjudged the output. Seeing the shattered sword, the king's brother raises his hand and declares the duel over, awarding the match to Ryu. The others in the crowd cry out in concern for their fallen captain. The king's brother approaches, asking if Ryu is all right and calling him Mr. Ohm. Karen excitedly congratulates her papa. A flustered Ryu questions the strange, long name he was just called. He reassures Ryu, explaining that while he overdid it, his handling of magic power has improved. He adds that the Dragon King won't be angry, as it was a battle by mutual consent. Hearing this, Ryu lets out a sigh of profound relief. With the duel concluded, the man with long, light hair known as Mr. Olm agrees to grant the party entry. Placing his hands, tipped with long black nails, against the massive doors, he announces that he will open the gate. The heavy gates grind open with a deafening rumble. Below, Ryu and his companions, Ruri, her parents, the defeated commander, and a cat-like girl, watch in anticipation as the way forward is revealed. A voice, deep and resonant, echoes from within the newly opened passage, offering a single, formal word of greeting. Welcome. Standing before the vast, open gateway, Mr. Olm gestures towards the sprawling city visible beyond the threshold, formally welcoming them to the Dragon Kingdom. As the group proceeds into the kingdom, a figure watches them from a high window. This unseen observer muses on the surprising development. a human capable of defeating one of his country's own soldiers. The observer, a man with short dark hair and a subtle smile, acknowledges that an interesting individual has arrived. He resolves that he cannot let his guard down and looks forward to speaking with the newcomer personally. Within a bustling foreign land, Ryu takes in the sights of the dragon's main stronghold. He remarks that the place is thriving and every bit as impressive as any human kingdom, a fact Ruri confirms. As they proceed, Karen suddenly flinches, startling Ruri, who asks what is wrong. The small Garuda quickly dismisses it, claiming it was nothing. Their attention is then drawn to a horned dragonkin commander and Ruri's mother. The commander announces that while it is sudden, he wishes to hold a strategy meeting with Fenrer and his companions, instructing them to wait in their guest rooms where an attendant will see to them. The commander reports to the Dragon King, who observes the group from his throne. The king questions the purpose of a strategy meeting when he sees no other races present who could serve as a fighting force. The implication of the king's words hits Ryu with sudden clarity. His eyes widen in shock as he realizes they are expected to fight the monstrous Dhaka with only the people currently gathered. The commander confirms this grim reality. He explains that during the last war, they had the cooperation of the previous hero and various other races. However, this time, with the possibility of a new hero arriving, the races that helped before have declined to participate. With a sigh, he affirms that this is correct. Ryu is visibly shaken by the news, internally questioning if they can possibly win with less strength than before. The Dragon King listens, his expression somber as he understands the situation. The king then elaborates on the core issue. The current hero, Tia, views all manner of monsters with hostility and cannot be relied upon. He states that whether they are half-breeds or can speak, they are likely to be attacked. Ryu turns to Ruri's mother, asking if they haven't tried to ask the hero for help. She replies that they would like to, if only they could. The Dragonkin commander offers his apologies to the king, concluding that they have no choice but to manage with their own strength. The news leaves Ryu stunned, questioning aloud why Tia would attack monsters indiscriminately. He continues to ponder this, wondering if there could be some other reason for her behavior. He considers that perhaps her sense of justice has simply grown stronger in her aim to be a hero. If that's all it is, he thinks it would be great, but his troubled expression reveals his deep-seated doubt. He continued to wrestle with the thought, wondering what could have possibly happened to make his childhood friend, Tia, despise monsters with such intensity. As his group stood before the city gates, a voice suddenly boomed from within, declaring their request to be an absolutely outrageous demand. Once inside, Ryu thanked his companions and suggested they head to the local guild, hoping someone there might have information on how to get the materials they needed. At the guild, however, their inquiries were met with suspicion. Ryu observed that people would clam up and hurry away the moment Fenrer or Garuda were mentioned, making him wonder if something had happened involving the two beasts in this country. Just then, a cloaked figure approached, asking if they were the ones who desired to hear tales of the two lords. When Ryu asked who they were, the mysterious person, their face obscured by a hood and scarf, identified themselves simply as an information broker. The broker's information pertained to the hero's party. Elsewhere, Tia's companion, Taiga, questioned why she was seeking information on Fenrir and Garuda, reminding her that King Dwar had told them they must bring the beast Fong and Flame to receive their desired weapon. Back in the guild, the information broker offered to enlighten Ryu's group on the current situation, noting that payment was unnecessary. The Dragonkin captain, however, grew impatient, telling the broker they would pay and demanding they spill the information. As the broker began to speak, the scene shifted to a flashback of Tia. After receiving the same information, Taiga tried to thank the broker, but Tia cut him off. Her face twisted in fury. She declared this was all the more reason she must kill them, roaring that she could not allow monsters with such terrifying power to roam free. Clutching her midsection, she made a solemn vow to eradicate every last terrifying monster in existence. With cold determination in her eyes, she promised herself that once her crusade was over, she would absolutely find Ryu. While waiting within the Dragon Kingdom's castle, Ryu, Ruri, and Karen sit around a table. Ryu slumps over, voicing his boredom. He internally acknowledges that he cannot simply wander off. The Dragon Lord and the Elders are in a crucial strategy meeting, and despite his impatience, he understands the situation remains critical. Deciding on a course of action, he reasons that they must get permission before exploring. As he approaches a sliding door, Ruri and Karen's spirits lift, both eagerly expressing their desire to look around the castle, thinking it sounds fun. Just as he reaches for the door, Ryu is taken aback by the sudden appearance of a woman in a maid's uniform. He recalls being told that the Dragon Princess had arranged for an attendant to assist them. The attendant, her expression unreadable, inquires if they are going out. Ryu confirms that they were hoping to look around inside the castle. He is inwardly shocked, realizing he hadn't sensed her presence at all, despite her standing right in front of the door. The attendant calmly agrees to guide them, and Karen lets out a cheerful yay. Their tour begins. The attendant points out the various impressive facilities of the kingdom, including the training grounds, the expansive library, and the grand dining hall. Finally, she leads them to a balcony overlooking a stunning garden, announcing it as the kingdom's pride, the central courtyard. Ryu, Ruri, and Karen gaze out, completely amazed by the magnificent view. Ruri exclaims how beautiful it is, and Ryu agrees, admitting he's never seen such a magnificent place. The attendant seems pleased, remarking that the Dragon Princess and Her Highness will be delighted by his approval. Ryu's expression sharpens at the mention of a princess. He turns to the attendant with a friendly smile, stating he has one more question. The attendant affirms that children are vital to the kingdom's future, to which Ryu directly asks if there is a princess there. He stops, sensing a presence. With a nervous smile, he points toward a nearby pillar and asks aloud who's been following them. From behind the marble column, a long, light-toned twin tail of hair is visible as its owner hides. Startled by the direct question, a small girl with horns and elaborate twin tails steps out, flustered. She stomps her foot, indignantly telling Ryu not to treat her like a brat. He tries to explain that it's dangerous for a child, but she immediately retorts, demanding to know why not. Before the argument can escalate, the attendant who had been guiding them steps forward. With a calm apology, she informs Ryu that she will call for the girl's guardian and asks him to wait. Looking somewhat relieved, Ryu simply agrees. The girl, however, is infuriated by this, believing they're making fun of her. Ruri observes the scene and suggests to Ryu that the girl might just be lost and that her parents will arrive soon. This only angers the girl further, who decides she has had enough. With a shout, she lunges, declaring she will take what she wants by force. Ryu is startled by her speed, narrowly dodging her grasp. He realizes that while her movements are simple, she is incredibly quick for a child. As he continues to evade her frantic grabs, Ryu desperately calls out to Karen and Lil, telling them not to just stand there and to do something. The girl relentlessly pursues him, demanding he give her the item, while Ryu insists that he cannot. His companions, however, offer no assistance. Ruri calmly notes that since he's dodging just fine, he must be okay. Karen cheerfully asks Ryu to play with her later, prompting his exasperated thought that they aren't going to help at all. The girl's patience finally snaps. With a furious roar, she declares that he has some nerve to defy her, and that she is now truly mad. Ryu can only let out a weary sigh in response to her escalating anger. A powerful aura explodes around her. Her long twin tails flare out, transforming and multiplying into a series of sharp, claw-like appendages that menacingly point toward Ryu. He stares, utterly shocked by the sudden and dangerous transformation. Lunging forward with her hand outstretched like a claw, she screams that it's his fault for not doing as she said. She vows that he will regret underestimating her as her attack closes in. He watches, wide-eyed, as the sharp, claw-like tendrils of hair lunge directly toward his face. With a last-second movement, he dodges aside. The attack misses, striking a nearby stone pillar with a deafening crack and shattering the stone where his head had just been. He realizes it was a close call. His attention snaps from the destroyed pillar to the source of the attack. The young princess has fallen to the ground, clutching her head in pain. He cautiously approaches, asking if she is all right. In response, the princess erupts into a loud, wailing cry, tears streaming down her face as she complains that it hurts. Ryu and Ruri can only stare, dumbfounded by the sudden tantrum. He tries to placate the sobbing girl, telling her to calm down, but she continues to scream, questioning why she couldn't win when her magic and bloodline are supposed to be superior. As he deals with the tantrum, Ruri thanks him for waiting. Just then, a new figure arrives, an elegant woman with long, light hair, accompanied by the attendant who had been with the princess earlier. Ryu recognizes the woman as Ms. Gwiver. The attendant, however, questions Ryu's presence, stating they had been calling for the girl's guardian. The regal woman, Ms. Gwiver, ignores her attendant's comment and instead bows her head slightly toward Ryu, offering a deep apology for the trouble her daughter has caused. When he questions the word daughter, she confirms it without hesitation. The petulant child is indeed hers. The revelation sends Ryu's mind reeling, his face a mask of pure shock. Before he can process this, the attendant huffs disdainfully, remarking that she would rather not claim such an ill-mannered grandchild. Ryu's shock deepens as he realizes the attendant is also the girl's grandmother. His thoughts spiral into a frantic calculation. He realizes that if the woman he thought was a simple attendant is the Empress Dowager, and the princess is the daughter of Empress Gwiver, then the family lineage is far more royal than he could have ever imagined. He stared, his mind reeling from the revelation. This spoiled brat, the girl who had just thrown a tantrum, was the princess of his kingdom? The thought was almost too absurd to comprehend as he looked at her pouting, flushed face. In a grand, arched hall, Ryu and his companions come face to face with the dragon princess. The young royal, with her elaborate twin tails and horns, glares at them, her thoughts filled with indignation. She internally scoffs, identifying the newcomer as a spoiled brat and questioning if this is truly the princess of the country. The princess's attendant, a woman in a maid's uniform, greets Mr. Olm and Ryu with a composed smile. She acknowledges that it has been a while, addressing Mr. Olm as Gramps and also greeting Tiamat. Mr. Olm explains that he heard a commotion and correctly assumed Ryu was involved. Her composure shatters as the princess erupts, shouting at Ryu. She declares that he was the one at fault for having the presumption to dodge her attacks. Beside them, Mr. Olm calmly notes to himself that he sees now The princess had wanted Ryu's sword. The attendant, Tiamat, sharply cuts the princess off. Her expression hardens as she scolds the girl, whose name she reveals is Uka. Tiamat states that Uka's loss was not by chance, but was inevitable, a direct result of her coddled attitude and lack of daily training. Having silenced the young royal, Tiamat turns her focus to Ryu. She informs him that she has a favor to ask. Ryu, looking apologetic for the whole affair, quickly assures her that it is not a problem for him. She then makes a request. Would Ryu be willing to become her granddaughter's training partner? Tiamat explains that if he refuses, the child will simply run away. Ryu is taken aback, questioning if it wouldn't be better to ask someone much stronger. At his hesitation, both Tiamat and Mr. Olm bow deeply, imploring his cooperation. They stress that they must ensure the child becomes the next queen. Uka herself adds that she had surmised Ryu's presence would keep her from fleeing, admitting she is interested in him. Ryu is completely flustered to see the dragon royals bowing to him. Mr. Olm tries to persuade him, pointing out that it's a perfect opportunity for Ryu to get stronger through the training as well, killing two birds with one stone. He considers for a moment before agreeing. He tells them to raise their heads, thanking them for the opportunity. Then, in a surprising turn, he faces Tiamat and asks if, in return, she would become his master. His request leaves Tiamat utterly stunned. Ryu explains his reasoning. Since she is the Empress Dowager, he perceives her to possess considerable skill, and he wishes to ask for her guidance to become as strong as he possibly can. He immediately refuses Karen's offer to train alongside him, insisting that she and the others should take it easy. Karen, however, loudly objects, declaring that she will train too. Karen explains her reasoning to a surprised Ryu, confessing that she doesn't want to be left out or feel alone ever again. Her plea does not go unheard. Mr. Olm remarks that it's always better to have more strength on their side, and if Karen herself wishes it, there should be no problem. Tiamat questions his certainty, but he reaffirms his stance, deciding to look after Karen. Princess Uka, meanwhile, reacts with wide-eyed excitement. With the decision made, Mr. Olm looks at Ryu with grave concern, urging him not to die. Tiamat then announces that the training will begin the next day. Ryu is left confused as Tiamat privately considers this a trial. The next day, the trial begins with shocking immediacy. Tiamat strikes Ryu with enough force to send him flying across the courtyard. As he struggles on the ground, she coldly orders him to get up quickly, stating that they are just getting started. He struggles under the weight of Princess Uka, who is now riding on his back as part of the training. Ryu realizes with dread that this is a super Spartan regimen and grimly thinks that Mr. Olm must have known what he was getting into when he offered to look after Karen. His suffering does not earn him any sympathy. Tiamat shouts that while his fundamentals are in place, he has too much wasted movement. She commands him to move more efficiently and conserve his stamina, warning that at his current level, he will never be able to defeat Dhaka. He grits his teeth, acknowledging that this is tougher than he imagined. Seeing Karen and Uka also trying their best, he feels there is no way he can run away now. This realization fuels a surge of resolve. With renewed determination glinting in his eyes, he reminds himself that he must get stronger. He came this far to catch up to the heroes, and he will not falter. His determination carries him through the day's ordeal. Tiamat, looking somewhat relieved herself, announces that this is enough for the first day. However, just as the others begin to relax, she adds that they will finish with 100 laps of running, much to the exhausted horror of Uka and Karen. She announces that the next phase of their training has begun, informing the utterly drained Ryu, Uka, and Karen that their meals will also be managed from now on. Observing the two collapsed at the table, she asks if they are okay, remarking that they seem to be having a tough time. Before departing, she forbids them from having any leftovers. As they sit in shared misery, Uka mutters that being a princess is tough. Ryu can only agree, conceding that she has guts, at least. A few days later, the training has escalated to intense sparring. Ryu and Uka exchange a flurry of blows, their movements a blur of action until Tiamat's voice cuts through, declaring it's enough. Tiamat steps in to critique Uka, stating her movements are too monotonous and that she must think before she attacks. Dejected, Uka cries out that she lost again, while Ryu slumps over, simply stating he's tired. Her focus then shifts to Ryu. She acknowledges his movements aren't bad, but his reactions are slow, pointing out that he only moved after Uka had already initiated her attack. He protests that her expectation is impossible, but she counters that it is not. She explains he must learn to perceive his opponent's movements and take the initiative, warning that against a truly fast enemy, reacting with his eyes alone will be too slow. She reveals the secret. He must read their magical power. She explains that the intent to move, the thoughts of where to go and whom to attack, manifests as magical power that moves faster than the physical body. By sensing this, he can grasp his opponent's actions before they happen. The concept makes Ryu recall the overwhelming feeling of facing a strong opponent like King Dwar. He realizes that understanding this sense, through words alone, is difficult. Observing his reaction, Tiamat deduces that he already possesses a latent ability to sense it. She declares that in that case, it will be faster to hone the sense in actual combat, startling him with a sudden pinch that demonstrates her point. She moves suddenly, her hands covering Ryu's eyes as she instructs him to cover his front. Startled and blushing, Ryu questions her abrupt action, his voice laced with confusion. In the space where the maid stood, a colossal, red-scaled dragon now looms, its leathery wings spread wide. Ryu stands dwarfed before the magnificent and terrifying creature, Tiamat's true form revealed. He stammers in disbelief as the dragon's voice, now deep and resonant, announces that it shall give him a trial. Its piercing eye fixes upon him. The dragon declares the terms. Ryu is free to use weapons, and he will pass if he can land just a single scratch upon its hide. Ryu protests that the conditions seem far stricter for him. Uka clarifies the full scope of the trial. Ryu must attack Tiamat while simultaneously evading her attacks. Uka, meanwhile, only needs to land one hit on Ryu to pass. From its imposing vantage point, the dragon Tiamat addresses Uka, stating that if she is to resent someone, it should be herself for choosing Ryu as her master. Appearing once more in her human guise, Tiamat gives the final word. The real test begins now. As she speaks, her massive dragon tail whips through the air, signaling the trial's commencement. Instantly, chaos erupts. Ryu grunts as he blocks a lunge from a monstrous creature, akin of Dhaka, while Uka simultaneously rushes in, reminding him not to forget her. He shouts in frustration that these attacks are far more intense than anything he's faced before. He desperately searches for an opening, his thoughts racing. The target, Tiamat, is massive, yet Uka's constant interference and evasions prevent him from landing a single blow. He feels utterly trapped by the situation. As Ryu hesitates, Tiamat's draconic head looms over him. She roars that he has no time for thought, reminding him of her lesson to read her magical power. She warns that as long as he relies on his eyes, he will never pass, punctuating her words with a powerful strike that narrowly misses him. He pants heavily, sweat beading on his brow as he stands his ground. The earth around him is scorched and torn, a testament to the ferocity of the attacks he has barely managed to evade, his body pushed to its absolute limit. As he struggles to catch his breath, the observers watch with keen interest. The Dragon King addresses Tiamat, who stands beside him in her maid form. Meanwhile, in her true draconic form, Tiamat assesses the situation, musing that for a human, Ryu has done well, but she wonders if he has reached his limit. She continues her assessment, voicing her doubts to the king. She speculates that it's possible the Elder Lord was mistaken about that person residing within Ryu, as she sees no sign of such a power awakening. Despite her doubts, Ryu himself is not yet ready to give up. He grits his teeth, his eyes burning with a fierce, desperate resolve, refusing to yield even as his body screams in protest. His unwavering determination does not go unnoticed. The Dragon King's expression shifts, a calculating look in his eyes as he considers the situation. He murmurs that it's worth a try. This subtle exchange is lost on Uka. Seeing Ryu falter, she scoffs that this must be all humans amount to. Believing it's a perfect chance to attack without restraint, she suggests they should just kill him here and now, an idea that leaves Ryu momentarily stunned. Before Uka can act, Tiamat's powerful voice cuts through the tension. She asks Ryu why he persists, explaining that if he fails here, he will only be killed by Dhaka later anyway. The great dragon then poses a chilling question. Wouldn't a happier fate be to die here, without suffering? As the Dhaka kin's tail begins to withdraw with a final, taunting farewell, Princess Uka desperately shouts for it to wait. Ryu stands frozen, his mind reeling with a single question. Why? He had come so far, all in the hopes of catching up to the heroes, only to see it all become useless. A memory of a gentle hand on his shoulder flashes through his mind. The thought of that kind of connection, that promise, strengthens his resolve. His eyes snap open, filled with renewed determination. He roars his defiance, declaring that he will absolutely not let it end like this. A sudden, powerful force erupts from his position, blasting Princess Uka away from the danger and catching the monstrous tail in a chaotic impact. As the dust settles, Ryu finds himself standing over the massive appendage, his small blade embedded in its flesh. He stares in disbelief, wondering if his attack actually managed to hit it. He quickly pieces it together. For a brief instant before the creature's body arrived, he had sensed a large mass approaching. He realizes that the sensation must have been his ability to read magical power. Acting on that instinct, he dodged and counterattacked, and the attack landed perfectly. He understands now. He can do it if he tries. The immediate danger having passed, Ryu turns to Tiamat, asking if her earlier threatening demeanor was just an act. With a slight smile, she confirms it was worth putting on the performance, though she admits she was half serious. She reasons that they can't very well go around killing their guests. Her expression softens into genuine approval. She congratulates him, stating that he performed very well, a clear pass with no complaints. Overwhelmed with relief, Ryu breaks into a wide, joyous smile and thanks her profusely. His celebration is cut short by a furious wail. Princess Uka, stomping her feet in frustration, cries out that it isn't fair that only one person passed. She tearfully vows that she will keep trying until she passes as well. Confused, Ryu looks to Tiamat and asks if the princess didn't pass. The attendant simply sighs, looking over at the fuming royal and telling her not to be so selfish. She assures Uka that she will have her chance another day. She observes the fuming princess, who can only manage a confused and angry, The source of the confusion is Ryu, who explains that since his attack landed, he believes he has passed. He admits he didn't have the leeway to notice until now, but it seems he grazed her. Tiamat concedes, stating that she never specified the attack had to be on the body. His face lights up with a hopeful, "Really?" just as Princess Uka shouts the same question in disbelief. Tiamat then announces that Uka passes as well. Ryu pats the princess's head, prompting a flustered blush from her. She grumbles that of course she passed, adding that for a human, he isn't bad. Ryu, meanwhile, celebrates his own success with a triumphant cheer. Later that night, under a full moon, the Dragon King commander sits with Tiamat, reflecting internally on how unexpected it is to be sharing a drink with her like this. He breaks the silence to ask about the training. Tiamat chuckles, reminiscing about their hot-blooded youth when they vied for power, a time she misses. The commander expresses his surprise, admitting he never thought a human could keep up with his training, nor that Tiamat would ever praise one. She replies that the day Master Ryu surpasses them might not be far off. She continues, noting that the training is going smoothly and that Ryu is a good person. She finds it telling that he doesn't even grimace at Princess Uka's selfishness, which suggests he is quite broad-minded. Her expression turns calculating as she quietly wonders if she could somehow force Master Ryu to become Uka's husband. The shocking suggestion causes the commander to choke on his drink. Coughing, he asks if she is drunk and truly okay with giving a human the dragon throne. Tiamat calmly replies that she believes in welcoming the strong over relying on bloodlines, and that if Ryu has the skill, any problems will not be an issue. Still processing her proposal, the Dragon King commander listens as Tiamat continues her explanation. She adds that, beyond his own strength, it seems Master Ryu has also been chosen by that person. His eyes narrow in grim understanding. The thought confirms his own suspicions. Tiamat then gives a name to this mysterious benefactor, her tone filled with reverence as she speaks of the enigmatic, long-haired figure, by our god. She elaborates, explaining that during the day's trial, she distinctly felt the power of this god emanating from Master Ryu. His magical power was beyond human, a fact she had doubted but now accepts as truth. The commander questions this. He asks why this god would grant power to Ryu, recalling that many have tried to form contracts to obtain that power before, only to die horrific deaths, unable to handle its immensity. Tiamat concedes they have no choice but to confirm it with Ryu directly. The image of their god, the source of this overwhelming and dangerous power, hangs unspoken in the air between them. Tiamat reiterates her conviction, stressing that she felt the god's power coming from Ryu during the trial, confirming his magical abilities are truly beyond the scope of any normal human. Again, the commander voices his deep-seated concerns, reminding her of the many who have perished seeking that very power and questioning why Ryu would be an exception. Tiamat can only agree that they must speak with the boy himself to understand. Later, seated at a table, Tiamat lays out her conclusion. If their god acknowledges Ryu, it means he possesses a power greater than any bloodline, a power no one else could ever grasp. The commander asks if anyone else has noticed, but Tiamat dismisses the idea, noting their god disappeared long ago. She proposes they simply ask Ryu when they met, and the commander agrees. Elsewhere, a glint of awareness crosses Ryu's face. A hidden mystery stirs within him as he murmurs to himself that the time for revelations will come, eventually. 5 days after beginning his training with his caretaker, Tiamat, Ryu lets out a sharp cry as he practices his punches. Tiamat observes him with a knowing, composed expression. He pauses, sweating but pleased, thinking that the training is finally paying off and he might even be able to land a hit on Dhaka. Tiamat confirms his progress is truly impressive, noting that his punches are much heavier compared to his first day. Ryu looks up, surprised and happy to hear the praise. In light of his hard work, Tiamat informs him that she will give him a special day off tomorrow. Ryu is taken aback by the unexpected offer. She explains that he has pushed his body quite a lot, and that taking time to rest is also part training. She suggests he go out with Lil and Karen, while the nearby Dragon King commander offers to inform the elder himself. Considering her suggestion, Ryu agrees, realizing he hasn't really looked around the city since he arrived. He decides he will go sightseeing. The next morning, sunlight streams into the bedroom where Ryu is sleeping. He stirs slightly in his bed, beginning to wake. Still half asleep, he hears a voice calling his name and wonders who it could be. In the haze of his dream, a shadowy figure with long black hair reaches for him. He faintly recognizes her as Lil, as her voice calls his name, urging him to wake up. His eyes snap open with a start. A young woman with black cat ears and long, dark hair is leaning over him, shouting for him to wake up. He sits up, disoriented, and mutters her name, Lil. She chides him for being half asleep and tells him to hurry up and change, as Karen is waiting for them. He recalled the promise made as they set out for the day. They were finally going into town together. Following this thought, the group proceeded down a bustling street. with Ryu leading Lil, the dragon princess Uka, and her attendant, Tiamat, toward the city center. As they walked, Lil mentioned that they didn't know their way around. Ryu pondered this for a moment, then asked where they should go first. He then had an idea, remembering that Karen didn't have any ribbons. He suggested they go look at some accessories. Lil was thrilled by the idea, and Ryu turned to Uka to ask if that was acceptable to her. His question about the princess prompted a memory of the conversation just moments before. Ryu had offered to guide them, surprised that the princess was joining their outing. Tiamat had explained that she was called to a meeting regarding countermeasures for Dhaka and needed Ryu to look after Uka, as no one else among the attendants could keep the princess in check. With Tiamat's words echoing in his mind that he seemed strong enough for the task, Ryu felt a bead of sweat form. He internally panicked, realizing he would be completely ruined if anything happened. Just then, Uka announced their arrival. The group had stopped before a well-kept, brightly lit accessory shop, its display cases gleaming within. Inside, Lil marveled at how much pretty merchandise was on display. Ryu explained to the shopkeeper that his guests were looking for accessories. The shopkeeper warmly welcomed Lady Uka, recognizing her immediately, and asked what she could help with. As Lil and the others began to look, Ryu turned to the princess, whose expression had soured. He asked if she wasn't going to browse with them. She responded with a huff, declaring that she wasn't interested in women's accessories and already owned similar items. After a brief, sidelong glance, she added that since they were there, she had something she wanted to ask him. He was caught off guard by her direct question. Why did he seek so much power? His surprise was evident as he looked at the young princess. After a moment's thought, he began to explain that he wanted to catch up to his childhood friends. The princess, however, cut him short with a dismissive wave, telling him to just get to the point. He elaborated on his past, recalling how both of his friends had received rare, combat-oriented jobs, while his own was considered subpar. This disparity led to him being left behind on their adventures, which fueled his decision to become stronger. His explanation only seemed to confuse the princess. She questioned how someone with his evident power could have an unfortunate job and demanded to know what it was. He plainly stated that he is a beast tamer. He clarified that his strength wasn't inherent to his job, but rather thanks to Lil and the others. The princess reacted with utter disbelief, exclaiming that a mere beast tamer could never have defeated her. Ryu insisted that it was true, as he had trained properly. Her shock gave way to contemplation. She mused aloud that if he had not met Lil, he likely would not have trained and might have instead traveled to other countries. The mention of other countries sparked a sudden, intense curiosity in her. She leaned in close, peppering him with questions. Was traveling fun? What kind of places had he seen? What were the people like? Flustered, he admitted that he had barely traveled at all, explaining that this was only the second country he had ever visited. He admitted that before this journey, he had never even left the Dragon Empire. A thought struck the princess, and she asked if he didn't think she, being royalty, would be more familiar with other countries than him. His surprised expression showed he hadn't considered this. Her question was a prelude to a quiet confession. She lowered her gaze, her hands clasped tightly, and admitted that because she is a princess and still a child, she is not permitted to leave the country easily. The truth, she confessed, is that she also wants to be free. Looking up at him with a newfound sense of camaraderie, she suggested that perhaps they are alike in this way. Ryo looked back at her, his expression softening as a new understanding dawned on him. He smiled gently, admitting that he used to think the same way. Princess Uka, surprised, questioned him, asserting that there's no way royalty and commoners could go out into the world together. He clarified that it wasn't that he thought those who could travel freely were bad. Rather, every time he heard their stories, he felt a pang of jealousy and frustration, as if he were the only one left behind. A memory of his friends, Taiga and Tia, surfaced as he recalled that he was left behind because his childhood friend was worried about him. Uka listened, her expression growing serious as she seemed to understand. He then asked if it wasn't the same for her, wishing that others would consider how it feels to be the one left behind. The princess's face puffed up in furious agreement. She exclaimed that it was exactly the same. Her father, mother, and even her grandmother were all far too overprotective, keeping her away from everything for her own sake, despite others her age going on journeys. Ryu prompted her to continue. Uka passionately described her dream journey, visiting places no one else has been a boast about it, meeting all kinds of races, eating different foods, and having countless new experiences. Her voice softened as she added that she might also make some friends. Ryu, meanwhile, realized that since she was so strong, being alone wasn't really a problem for her. From around a corner, Karen called out to Ryu, urging him to look. She had been observing the interaction and concluded that the princess was just messing with them before turning away. As Uka tried to dismiss their conversation as mere chit-chat, Karen approached them directly. She asked what they were talking about and pointed out an accessory, noting that the one Uka had picked was cute and looked good on her. Karen questioned why Uka was being so difficult. Without missing a beat, Ryu bluntly stated that the princess had said she wants to be friends. The direct statement left Uka completely shocked and flustered. Karen looked up with genuine confusion, her head tilted. Aren't we already friends? She asked. Her simple, Innocent questions stunned both Ryu and the princess into silence. Flustered, Uka challenged Karen's definition, asking if they were friends just because they ate and trained together. Karen confirmed this was her understanding, asking if that wasn't what friends do. The princess stammered, unable to form a reply. Seeing the princess's hesitation, Karen's expression fell. She quietly asked if being friends with her was unpleasant. She then explained that while she has her papa and her sister, this was her first time having a friend, and it made her really happy. Uka was left speechless by the pure sincerity of the confession. She looks between Ryu and Lil, admitting that she also has few friends outside of Karen and her family. With a hint of vulnerability, she confesses that she would be very happy if they could all be friends. Overwhelmed by her own forwardness, her face flushes as she grumbles a reluctant, "Fine." Nearby, Karen lets out a knowing sigh. Karen, however, seizes the moment, excitedly suggesting that she and Uka should buy matching ribbons. Though Uka notes she already has one, her protests are drowned out by her own flustered outburst. She declares that if they insist, she will be their friend, but grants only Ryu and Karen permission to call her by her first name. Her declaration only fuels Karen's delight. The Garuda beams, exclaiming that matching will be proof for everyone that they are super close friends. Faced with such pure joy, Uka can only sniffle, too overwhelmed to speak. Watching the scene unfold, Lil smiles warmly at Ryu. She expresses her gladness that the two are getting along, noting how happy they both look. Ryu quietly agrees. His attention then shifts to a nearby stall. He considers a necklace for Lil, but quickly dismisses it, disliking how the chain resembles a collar. He recalls that they still have money left over from selling materials in the city of Falkrown. Noticing she hasn't chosen anything, he asks Lil why she isn't buying something for herself. She explains that accessories would only get in the way during battle. Understanding her practical point, Ryu suggests something edible instead. Just then, his eyes land on another item. He picks up a white scarf and drapes it around Lil's neck, suggesting it as a possibility. He points out that it wouldn't feel tight, could be worn on her arm, and that the white would look great with her black hair. Lil is left momentarily speechless. Her surprise melts into a happy blush. She thanks Ryu, promising to treasure the gift and insisting it's perfect. Flustered by her earnestness, he quickly adds that he's no expert, so she shouldn't feel obligated to keep it if she doesn't truly like it. As the day's shopping concludes, a single, satisfied thought surfaces. They all made good purchases. He walked with his companions through the city streets. Lil asked where they were going next, while Karen wondered if there was a popular shop nearby. Uka, brimming with confidence, declared they should leave it to her. She led the way with a smug grin, promising that Ryu and Lil would be satisfied. Ryu, however, suddenly looked back with a start, a flicker of unease on his face as he asked what was wrong. His premonition was instantly validated. High above them, a massive, dark dragon soared through the sky. The group on the ground could only stare as the creature's silhouette passed overhead, a silent, ominous portent. Before they could fully react, Tiamat rushed towards them, her expression grim. She announced that they had run into a problem. Ryu, seeing her distress, immediately asked what was wrong. She delivered the grave news. The sealing spell on the great dragon Dhaka was unraveling far faster than expected. Tiamat warned that at this rate, the beast could be released today and urged them to prepare. Ryu was stunned, exclaiming in disbelief that it could happen so soon. With a plan forming, Ryu instructed the group to return to the castle for now. He stated that once they were ready, they would all head to the cave together. Meanwhile, deep within a dark, rough-hewn cavern, a monstrous form began to stir. A massive, scaly tail twitched as a voice, ancient and powerful, echoed from the shadows. Finally, from the oppressive darkness, two malevolent eyes flared to life. The formidable enemy's thoughts were clear and full of purpose. The chance to fulfill its true goal had at last arrived. A large, dark-scaled dragon soars through the cloudy sky, the powerful beats of its wings echoing across the landscape. On the ground, Ryu watches its approach, his expression tense and uncertain. Beside him, Lil declares that it's finally time for the showdown, while Uka quietly agrees. He turns to his most experienced companion, a bead of sweat on his temple, and asks Tiamat if she has ever fought Dhaka before. She admits that back when she was still quite inexperienced, she never faced a Dhaka directly. However, she did fight his underlings and found even them to be formidable. As she speaks, Ryu's self-doubt grows, wondering if he can truly handle this. Tiamat notices his expression, remarking that she can more or less guess what he's thinking. She continues, identifying his weakness not as being human, but as his lack of confidence. She assures him that his training has definitely made him stronger and states that if he cannot believe in himself, then he should let her, his master, believe in him instead. Leaning closer, she looks him directly in the eye and states plainly, "You are strong." She encourages him to try and have a little more confidence. Her words break through his doubt. Ryu's expression brightens with renewed determination as he exclaims, "Yes." Nearby, Uka shouts that she'll do her best too, prompting a light-hearted retort from Lil, while Karen chirps in agreement from atop Ryu's head. With their resolve strengthened, the group proceeds, walking as one through a wide, rocky canyon toward their destination. As they advance, they come upon a massive, glowing magical seal etched into the canyon wall. In front of it, a line of robed figures stands with their arms outstretched, channeling immense energy into the cracking barrier. Ryu asks who the figures are. Tiamat explains they are the kingdom's mages, pouring their mana into the seal to keep it from breaking too fast. Just then, the Dragon King, flanked by his commander, greets them, commending the mages for their good work. The Dragon King presses his hands against the failing magical barrier, declaring that the seal is at its limit and Dhaka will revive in mere minutes. He entrusts the situation to his mages, who stand ready and acknowledge their duty. As if in response to his words, the great seal fractures violently, light erupting from the cracks. The Dragon King, his commander, Ryu, and Uka watch in alarm as he exclaims that the seal is breaking. The Dragon King commander reacts instantly, turning to roar an order to the assembled forces. He bellows for everyone to evacuate immediately, warning that Dhaka is returning. However, it is not Dhaka's presence that fills the breach. A different voice echoes from the darkness within the widening fissure, declaring that it has been waiting for this moment to face them again. A massive, dark form begins to emerge. The creature pulls itself free from the shattered seal. It is a colossal dragon, but not the three-headed sorceress beast they expected. This new threat looms over the battlefield, its shadow falling upon Ryu and his companions. A closer look reveals the monster's terrifying visage. It is a single beast with two heads, each perched on a long, serpentine neck, its twin maws agape. As this new dragon appears, the Dragon King coolly assesses Ryu's party from a distance. He notes the presence of a Draconaut and a Fenrer among them, his expression thoughtful and calculating. His commander, however, makes a different assumption, addressing Ryu's group as the hero of the era and his companions. Ryu, taken aback, vehemently denies being a hero. Ignoring the denial, the commander orders his own forces into a battle formation, telling everyone to stay alert. The two-headed dragon dismisses the commander's posturing, calling him an annoying insect. With a contemptuous command to begone, it unleashes a spell. A shimmering circle of light envelopes the Dragon King and his entire retinue. The commander shouts for his men to fall back, but they vanish in a flash of light before they can react. One of the dragon's heads explains that it simply teleported them to a separate space, as their presence would have ruined the fun. This casual display of power is met with cries of anguish from Uka and Lil, who scream for their now-vanished father and mother. The two-headed dragon fixes its gaze on Ryu, its voice echoing as it dismisses all others. It declares that the only ones it wishes to fight are the members of the hero's crew. With its intent stated, one of the heads lets out a guttural growl, announcing that it is time to have some fun and begin the confrontation. Meanwhile, in the pocket dimension where the Fenrir were sent, the elder wolf slams his body against the magical barrier of their prison, which cracks but does not break. Ruri's father expresses his own frustration at the unbreakable wall, while her mother calmly assesses that the entire space is a high-level spell, likely Dhaka's magic. Despite their confinement, the father remains confident that Ryu's party will not fall easily. The elder Fenrir urges calm, but internally worries, knowing they must hurry back to the others. In yet another isolated dimension, Princess Uka cries out in alarm. Her father, the Dragon King, tells her to focus and find a way to escape. As he speaks, shadowy, serpentine tendrils erupt from the ground, lashing towards him. Uka recognizes the dark energy, shouting that he is with Dhaka. The initial assault is just the beginning. The Dragon King finds himself surrounded by a writhing mass of darkness, realizing that this situation will take more effort to resolve than he first thought. Back on the true battlefield, one of the dragon's heads remarks that Ryu dodged its attack. With Karen hovering nearby, Ryu retorts that he didn't need an invitation to join the fight, but acknowledges that merely dodging will not be enough to defeat his colossal foe. He charges forward, but Tiamat watches in horror as he is caught in the dragon's jaws. She realizes with a start that he wasn't too slow. He deliberately took the hit. Trapped within the beast's mouth, Ryu has a grim realization. This must be what the elder had warned him about. As he prepares to act, Tiamat screams at him not to. She reveals a terrible truth. Attacking recklessly will only make things worse, as the dragon's very flesh and blood can spawn underlings. She assesses the battlefield with a grim expression, noting that with their forces depleted, they cannot allow the dragon to summon more minions. Tiamat determines they must land a single, decisive blow. The most likely to succeed, she reasons, are herself, having faced the beast before, and Ryu, who carries a certain powerful individual within him. From inside the dragon's maw, Ryu recognizes the summoning technique and questions the new creature that has appeared. In response to the dragon's power, a multitude of intricate magical circles materialize in the air, glowing with ominous energy. From these glowing glyphs, a new combatant is summoned, a hulking, multi-headed demonic figure with leathery wings. On the ground below, Ryu, Lil, and Uka stare up in utter shock at the formidable new adversary. The two-headed dragon taunts Ryu, asking if this is all he's got. Ryu feels a wave of despair, realizing the spell is far stronger than before and the dragon is chaining them endlessly. He understands that even if they manage to land a hit, more underlings will simply emerge, leaving him to wonder what they can possibly do. Seeing his despair, Tiamat shouts for everyone to stay calm and not panic. She sternly warns that if they allow the dragon to control the pace of the fight, they are all doomed. She internally concedes that even though Ryu and the others have grown stronger, they lack true combat experience. Their only option, she concludes, is to buy time and believe that the Dragon King and the Elder will return to aid them. With renewed resolve, she steps forward, declaring that they simply need to end this in a single strike. Until then, she announces, she will take command and protect everyone. Before she can act, Uka shouts for everyone to leave it to her, boasting that she will finish her chant before the demon does. Tiamat cries out for her to wait, but it is too late. Ryu watches, stunned, as Uka transforms into a small dragon, realizing he is witnessing her true form. Now a small, draconic creature, she lunges at the summoned demon, roaring that this ends now. The demon, however, is unimpressed. It raises a hand, conjuring a defensive magical seal as it calmly mutters, "Foolish." The demon effortlessly casts a powerful spell without an incantation, a feat that shocks Ryu. A violent explosion erupts directly in Uka's path, engulfing her. Ryu can only cry out her name in alarm as the blast obscures her from view. He watches as Uka's small dragon form is thrown by the force of the demon's spell, landing hard amidst a cloud of dust and debris, momentarily stunned by the impact. She collapses to the ground, unable to rise. From the sidelines, the massive two-headed dragon approaches its fallen kin, looking down upon her still form. Seeing the small dragon fall, Ryu cries out in alarm, mistaking her for Tiamat. The two-headed dragon scoffs at his concern, stating that it has no use for the weak, even as Tiamat herself looks on, sweating and aghast. On the ground, Uka thrashes with what little strength she has left, screaming for her grandmother to get out of her way. Her cries become more desperate, pleading for her grandmother to stay with her as her small body trembles with the effort to move. The two-headed dragon suddenly falters. It realizes its mouth and body are not moving properly. It understands now, Uka's attack was not a failure, but a successful delivery of a paralysis ailment. Observing this turn of events, the summoned demon expresses its disappointment. It questions if this is the best the hero's party can do, remarking that the previous generation's hero was more bloodthirsty and put up a real fight. It worries that at this rate, the battle will be a disappointment. Its disappointment curdles into manic excitement. It roars at Ryu's party, demanding they come forward and fight more, bellowing for them to provide some real fun as they brace for the onslaught. The elder Fenrer slams a paw down, crushing another of the seemingly endless snake-like creatures. He grunts in frustration, realizing that no matter how many they defeat, more just keep coming. There appears to be no end to the swarm. He reflects that the situation is dire. It has been some time since he and Ruri were separated from Ryu and the others. The Fenrir knows they must reach Dhaka quickly and regroup. As if sensing their plight, Ryu stares forward with grim determination. Ruri, in her Fenrir form beside him, calls out his name, but his focus is elsewhere. He silently urges his distant comrades to hang on until he can reach them. Their path is suddenly blocked by a colossal, multi-headed demon. The creature stands imperiously, demanding they fight and entertain it. Below, the massive two-headed dragon reels back, one of its heads crying out in fear for its grandma, as Ryu stands his ground. Seeing the dragon's hesitation, Ryu turns to it, his expression sharp. He questions if they are waiting for someone to fall in battle before they are willing to unleash their true power. Before the dragon can answer, a devastating attack slams into its side. Ryu shouts their names in alarm, crying out for both Uka and Tiamat as their combined form is struck down. The impact results in a massive explosion, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris that completely engulfs the colossal dragon. As the smoke begins to clear, Ryu stands defensively before the fallen dragon, his short sword drawn. Ruri joins him, teeth bared, both prepare to face the enemy that now looms over them. He glances back at the wounded beast, shouting for Uka to hang in there. From the dust, one of the dragon's heads weakly manages to voice its thanks. Ryu presses on, his voice filled with desperate urgency. He yells that if Uka dies, everything Tiamat did to protect her and all their training will be for nothing. The dragon's head, eyes wide with guilt, stammers that it's all her fault, but Ryu fiercely retorts, asking why else she thinks they came here in the first place. He shouts with fierce determination, insisting that they are all worried about Tiamat. This, he declares, is precisely why they must defeat the demon and save her immediately. His passionate plea reaches one of the dragon's heads, which looks back at him, its eyes wide with a mixture of fear and surprise. Sensing a shift, he presses his advantage with a hopeful smile, calling out Uka's name and asking her to fight together with him. The dragon stammers, still struggling to find its voice. A moment of understanding passes between the two heads. The one representing Tiamat promises she won't do anything reckless alone anymore, while the Uka head confirms that she is all right now. With their resolve restored, the two-headed dragon rises to its feet, joining Ryu, Ruri, and Karen. Ryu declares that this time, they will face the demon together. Their unified defiance draws the attention of the multi-headed demon. It smirks, finding their determination amusing. It remarks that those eyes, seeking to defeat it, finally make them worthy opponents, worthy of the title hero. Before they can act on their renewed courage, the demon unleashes a preemptive strike, launching a barrage of magical projectiles that streak across the battlefield toward the group. The dark energy blasts slam into Ryu, Ruri, and Karen, throwing them off balance and halting their advance before it can even begin. The demon identifies Karen as a particularly troublesome foe and decides to eliminate her first. It unleashes a swarm of dark, grasping tendrils, questioning if this is the fire of a Garuda that can even burn the brain. The tendrils envelop the small creature as Ryu cries out her name in alarm. In a flash, Ruri intercepts the attack, taking the full force of the dark magic herself. As the energy dissipates, Karen, now safe, thanks her sister. Ruri turns to her, asking if she is okay. Though she is injured, the two-headed dragon stands guard over Ruri, roaring at the multi-headed demon that it will not be allowed to pass. The demon, however, seems unimpressed, coolly contemplating its next move. The dragon's charge is met with a shimmering barrier of magic, its attack rendered completely futile. As the demon mocks the useless effort, Ryu watches from the side, his mind racing to find a new course of action. He realizes their attacks are useless unless they are incredibly strong, and even then, they might just provoke the demon further. He recalls his training with Tiamat, who advised him to read the flow of magic and observe his opponent's movements. There must be a weak point somewhere. His eyes narrow in concentration, the reflection of the demon's massive horn filling his vision as he desperately searches for an opening. The demon unleashes another pulse of magical energy, its power so immense that even Karen is taken aback, realizing the hopelessness of a direct confrontation. Seeing this, he knows he has to try something. He calls out to Ruri and Karen, declaring that he has a plan and needs their help to execute it. They both turn, startled. Ruri voices her concern, asking what will happen if he fails. She reminds him that as a human, he is the most vulnerable among them. He reassures them with a confident smile, stating that he knows they will protect him if anything goes wrong. It is because he trusts them both completely that he is willing to try this. His faith galvanizes them. Ruri agrees, her resolve hardened, and Karen readies herself for action. With his core team committed, Ryu turns and shouts instructions to Uka and the two-headed dragon. From its vantage point, the multi-headed demon observes the group's hurried conference. It smirks, musing about the futility of their scheming and wondering how long their newfound confidence will last. The demon observes Ruri charging forward and taunts her, declaring that if she won't approach, it will come to her. In response, the Fenrer abruptly changes her trajectory, leaping through the air. It sneers, calling her a nimble dog, but confidently states she cannot dodge while airborne. With a swift motion, the demon unleashes a powerful, sweeping attack aimed directly at the vulnerable Fenrer. The attack connects, but instead of striking Ruri, it dissipates against a decoy made of Garuda's flames. The demon expresses surprise, realizing the deception, but remains confident, noting that the intense heat should keep its foes at bay. Its confidence wavers as it questions why the Garuda's flame isn't having the expected effect. A dragon of that caliber should have been incinerated. The two-headed dragon, however, withstands the inferno, its scales shimmering within the blaze. The reason for this resilience becomes clear as Ryu explains to the two-headed dragon that their armor is reinforced with Karen's heat-resistant feathers. He instructs his draconic ally to maintain the decoy and keep the demon's attention focused on them. He internally acknowledges the strength of Dhaka's magic, reasoning that if the source of its power is lost, it will be unable to cast spells. The demon, meanwhile, dismisses the frontal assault as foolish yet intriguing, pondering the true source of its own formidable power. In response to the demon's arrogance, the two-headed dragon retorts that the demon is the true fool, issuing a bizarre taunt. As it speaks, intricate magical circles begin to form in the air before the demon. At that moment, Ryu has a sudden realization. The source of the demon's magic is its tail. Simultaneously, Ruri lunges, her target not the demon's main body, but the serpentine appendage. Her attack is successful. The tail is caught and neutralized. The demon's main head registers surprise before conceding the point with grudging respect. It acknowledges that they were the first ever to successfully seal its magic, having correctly identified its weak point. Despite this setback, the demon declares that the battle is far from over. It will now be a contest of raw strength. As it speaks, its body erupts, spawning numerous shadowy, serpentine kin to continue the assault. As the demon and its newly spawned kin swarm the battlefield, the two-headed dragon roars with glee. One head declares that things are finally getting fun, while the other bellows for more, demanding a fight that gets the blood pumping. Atop the dragon's back, Princess Uka and Ruri can only watch the escalating chaos. The dragon's boisterous excitement suddenly falters, replaced by a flicker of confusion. It surveys the scene, realizing that while its wish for a grand battle has been granted, something crucial is missing. Its gaze sharpens as it searches for the hero. Elsewhere, Ryu's own eyes narrow with focus, mirroring the dragon's intensity. The dragon's heads whip around in a panic. Where is he? One roars, while the other anxiously wonders if there is still more to come from their unseen opponent. A calm voice cuts through the din. Over here, Ryu suddenly appears, riding atop Ruri, who has leapt into the fray, his sword held at the ready. The demon's head snaps toward him as the realization dawns. All the previous fighting was just a ploy to buy time. It watches as Ryu's blade begins to glow, now infused with a massive charge of magic. The demon simply acknowledges the tactic with a quiet, yeah. A torrent of power erupts from Ryu, his face contorted in a primal roar. The demon, however, looks on with pure ecstasy. Its wish is finally coming true. This, it realizes, is what it had been waiting for, the hero's true form. With a final declaration to settle the matter once and for all, Ryu unleashes the entirety of the stored energy. A blinding explosion of power consumes the battlefield. As the cataclysmic strike fades, clouds of dust and debris billow across the ravaged landscape, obscuring the outcome of the battle. The dust begins to settle, revealing the massive, unmoving form of the multi-headed demon, its body sprawled and broken upon the cracked earth. Surveying the scene, Ryu, panting from exertion, voices the question on everyone's mind, asking if they have truly won. Beside him, the two-headed dragon also wonders aloud if their foe is defeated. Suddenly, Ryu's head whips around, his eyes wide with alarm as he senses something amiss. The two-headed dragon's expression sharpens, its gaze fixed and intense. The tension breaks as Ryu erupts in joyous celebration, shouting that they did it, that they beat the demon themselves. His companions share in the relief, and Uka excitedly declares she is now going to help her grandmother. His celebration is cut short. A sharp exclamation draws his attention to the two-headed dragon, just as the supposedly defeated demon begins to stir on the ground. The two-headed dragon, however, speaks with an air of finality. It calls the attack a good strike, one delivered with all of their strength, and muses that it was a worthy death for a wicked dragon. It then turns its attention to Ryu, offering him anything he desires as a reward. The dragon suggests that if Ryu is a hero, its power and knowledge of magic could be of great help to him. The dragon's insistence on the hero triggers a memory for Ryu. He recalls asking about this fixation, and the mysterious woman with long black hair explained that the previous hero was aggressive and enjoyed fighting, speculating that the dragon wanted to fight the hero's group. The two-headed dragon continues its explanation, clarifying that it didn't fight simply for the sake of it. It wanted to fight strong opponents to know its own true strength. It found that normal people were no match, and eventually realized that only the hero could provide a worthy battle. The great beast continues its tale, explaining that heroes once came to defeat it, leading to it being feared. However, the ceiling was incomplete, leaving it deeply unsatisfied. It clarifies that all it ever wanted was an equal, someone who could recognize and match its strength. Ryu and his companions listen intently to the dragon's lament. His words strike a chord with Ryu, who realizes the dragon was also alone. He recalls his own past, how having immense magical power from birth was a burden that made it impossible to use it all, isolating him from others who told him he couldn't fight and should just tend to the animals. He looks down at the defeated dragon, who tells him to hurry and decide on a reward, or else finish it off quickly. With newfound resolve, Ryu announces that he has made his decision. He extends his hand with a bright smile, making an astonishing offer. He asks the creature, whom he names as Dhaka, to become his friend. The dragon, Ruri, and the cockatrice chick are all struck speechless. The dragon breaks the silence, questioning what he means, while Ruri shouts in disbelief, demanding to know what Ryu is saying. He calmly explains that he understands the dragon's feelings, as he too was alone due to his overwhelming power. He then points out that since they have already defeated it, the immediate threat is gone. He stands before the massive creature and reaffirms his offer, stating that he thinks they can be friends. Before a response can be given, Princess Uka's sharp voice cuts in, declaring she is against the idea. Ryu turns to her with a slightly playful expression, asking if his decision counts for both himself and Dhaka. She furiously objects, reminding everyone that Dhaka has killed many people and harmed her grandmother. She argues that forgiving him is wrong, as he might go wild again, and that it is fundamentally wrong to befriend someone like that. The princess remains defiant, shouting that it's not enough. Ryu calmly counters her outburst, explaining that for what he has heard, Dhaka only fights those who attack it first, suggesting it won't rampage without reason. As they argue, Garuda, perched atop one of the dragon's heads, makes an observation. She notes that with Dhaka subdued, the oppressive magic that had been affecting her seems to have lifted. She continues her thought, remarking that the monster world is a place of survival of the fittest. Because of this, she concludes it is best to leave the matter in Ryu's hands. Ryu reinforces this sentiment with confidence. He argues that even if something does happen, they have already proven they can combine their strength to defeat the dragon once and can do so again. Seeing Uka is still unconvinced, he makes a direct, personal appeal. He tells her that she doesn't have to trust Dhaka, but asks if she can at least trust him. His earnest plea hangs in the air, capturing the attention of both Uka and Ruri as they watch him. After a moment, Uka puffs her cheeks in frustration. She reluctantly agrees to let it slide this one time, but warns Ryu that he will regret it. He thanks her, while one of Dhaka's heads chuckles at the strange wish of being asked to be friends. With the matter settled, Ryu turns to the two-headed dragon. He declares that as a friend, he will now heal the wounds inside it, and a bright orb of light materializes in his outstretched hand. He presses the light into the dragon's body, telling it to accept this as a token of friendship. He reveals that he has placed a piece of his soul inside it. The dragon's eyes widen in shock. The colossal beast begins to fade away into particles of light. As it vanishes, a voice echoes. Until we meet again, hero Ryu. The dragon is gone, leaving a stunned Ryu standing alone. He collapsed face first on the ground, the strain finally overwhelming him. Ruri, in her small Fenrer form, rushed to his side, crying out his name in alarm. His world dissolved into darkness, punctuated only by distant, shimmering lights. His consciousness drifted untethered through the void, a silent space between worlds. Slowly, awareness returned. He found himself lying down, a familiar face with long, dark hair gazing down at him with gentle concern. He sat up abruptly, disoriented. Where am I? He wondered, realizing he had lost consciousness. The woman calmly explained that they were inside his mind. Ryu. A gentle smile touched her lips as she formally introduced herself, her voice soft yet clear. You are you. Ryu, flustered, was told he was being reckless again. You are you greeted him, saying it had been a long time, and noted that he wasn't fully recovered. She explained that it was fine, as she could only meet him this way when he was awake. Her expression grew more serious as she continued, admitting that his recent actions made her worry. She acknowledged his desire to become stronger, but reminded him that the fight with Dhaka and his subsequent training were incredibly dangerous. Seeing his earnestness, her features softened. Okay, I forgive you, she said. Ryu, looking resolute, promised to be more careful from now on, acknowledging the training she had helped him with. With that settled, Yuryu's attention turned to a more pressing matter. She asked about Dhaka, specifically mentioning that Ryu had apparently put a piece of his soul inside the dragon. He found himself still within the void of his consciousness, where Ryu gestured toward a dark, egg-like object suspended in the shimmering space. She identified it as the very thing they were discussing. Looking closer, he realized it was Dhaka's soul, noting its surprising beauty. Ryu explained that the beings known as wicked dragons were not born evil. They were originally just very powerful dragons who became twisted after exposure to forbidden magic and research. He quietly processed this revelation. Ryu observed him, asking if he was sympathizing with the creature, remarking on his inherent kindness. She elaborated on her theory, suggesting that because Ryu was a dragon himself, he couldn't bring himself to kill Dhaka. With a gentle smile, she admitted that she liked that quality in him. Ryu conceded that was part of the reason, but added that he simply doesn't want to kill recklessly. Ryu then shifted the topic back to the soul egg, urging him to look inside. Within the dark sphere, a small, embryonic dragon could be seen, which she explained was Dhaka's soul form, currently healing its damaged body. He acknowledged her words, then asked if this meant the dragon would one day revive. Ryu confirmed it was possible, but told him not to worry, as she would be there if anything happened. She then stated it was almost time for him to go. This prompted Ryu to ask a pressing question. When could Ryu leave his body? His concern was evident as he wondered if she felt lonely or sad, all alone in the space inside him. Ryu's expression turned somber for a moment as she quietly replied that she did not. Her smile quickly returned as she reassured him, explaining that the space inside him was warm, comforting, and even comfortable, so he shouldn't worry. Ryu felt a sense of relief, murmuring that it was good to hear, before beginning a hypothetical question. He asked, hypothetically, if he were to become the Demon King, would she be able to leave? Ryu was visibly startled by the question, but confirmed that yes, she could. As Ryu's expression hardened with resolve, she quickly interjected that it would be better if he did not become the Demon King. Before he could finish his sentence about wanting to help her, Ryu cut him off, declaring their time for talk was up. She warned him that Demon Kings are monsters, like beasts, and that becoming involved with them is far too dangerous. He reaches out, desperately calling Ryu's name, but she begins to fade into a brilliant white light. With a gentle smile, she promises they will talk again, her form dissolving before he can get an answer. The vision shatters, and his eyes snap open. He gasps, sweat beading on his brow as he returns to consciousness with a jolt. He finds himself lying in a bed, surrounded by the concerned faces of his companions. Lil, Uka, Tiamat, and even Ruri's parents are gathered around him. Tiamat is the first to speak, her voice filled with relief as she expresses her gladness that he is all right. Disoriented, he looks around, questioning if they are in a cave. Tiamat gently corrects him, explaining that after he collapsed, they regrouped with Grandma and the others, then brought him back to the castle to be cared for. Realizing he must have slept for quite a while, Ryu thanks everyone for their concern. Tiamat advises him to rest more and to call them immediately if he feels worse, and they begin to file out of the room. Ryu, in turn, wishes them all a good rest. Once he is alone, his thoughts immediately return to you. He reflects that she likely cut their conversation short on purpose, and he begins to suspect that the very idea of him becoming a demon king is the core of the problem. Meanwhile, within the void of his consciousness, you floats as a solitary silhouette, adrift in the darkness among distant points of light. She clenches her fists, her own thoughts troubled. The path to her freedom, Ryu becoming a demon king, is a possibility, but she knows the cost. Those with immense power often end up isolated, and she fears he would lose the very friends he has fought so hard to make. The unspoken question lingers, a shared burden between them. Their relationship is now defined by this terrible choice. Can Ryu truly endure such a lonely fate for her sake? In the aftermath of a great battle, the town is in full festival mode. Confetti rains down on celebrating citizens as a large drum is beaten, filling the streets with joyous noise. The celebration is in honor of Dhaka's defeat, with patrons in a tavern raising their mugs in a cheer. As Ryu walks through the streets with Lil, he overhears the crowd cheering for both him and the Dragon King. Lil observes that he has become quite popular, but Ryu laments that his newfound fame makes it harder to simply walk through town. His presence is soon requested in the throne room. Before the court, the Dragon King formally thanks Lord Ryu for his efforts, declaring that Dhaka's defeat was only possible because of him. Ryu, accompanied by Lil, Princess Uka, and Karen, stands before the throne. The Dragon King then asks if there is anything Ryu would like as a reward. Ryu, caught off guard, replies that there's nothing in particular he desires. The king insists, explaining that it reflects poorly on the nation's honor if they cannot properly reward hero, and asks him to accept something for their sake. Ryu internally considers the offer. He reflects that he didn't fight for the sake of a reward, but he understands that if it is a matter of their national pride, he should probably accept something. He then asks the king what kind of rewards are typically given. The king explains that it is usually treasure, such as a magic gem that boosts power, or a special privilege, like the right to live within the royal castle. As Ryu hesitates, clearly unsure of what to ask for, the Empress Dowager Tiamat steps forward with a confident expression, offering a suggestion of her own. With a sly smile, she looks directly at Ryu and declares, "I offer myself as your reward." The proposal leaves Ryu and his companions utterly speechless and wide-eyed with shock. The group erupts in disbelief. Uka shouts, asking if Tiamat means as a bride, and questions her grandmother's thinking. Lil exclaims that her daddy is getting married. Karen wonders aloud how the Dragon King could ever allow such a thing, but the king simply affirms, "Indeed." The Dragon King turns his attention to the stunned Ryu, who stands frozen alongside his equally shocked companions. He asks the young hero's opinion, suggesting that Tiamat would be a fine match. He stands flustered before the Dragon King, who questions why he is so against the marriage proposal. Ryu desperately pleads for Tiamat to correct the king, but the Empress Dowager, with a slight smile, calmly states that she's being quite serious. Trying to deflect, he blurts out an alternative. A claw from Tiamat would make an excellent weapon, wouldn't it? Tiamat covers her mouth, amused, as the young Princess Uka looks on from behind him. The Dragon King considers the idea, musing that dragon claws can indeed be forged into swords, and their scales make for good armor. Ryu listens intently, seeing a possible escape from his predicament. From his throne, the king asks if there's anything else he desires. Before the question is even finished, Ryu hastily agrees, exclaiming that he'll take the claw. Tiamat shouts his name, a sharp edge of surprise in her voice. Looking slightly crestfallen, Tiamat concedes. She formally declares that, as his reward, she shall grant him a claw. She tells him to relax and enjoy himself while they prepare it. Later, in a palace courtyard, Ryu is already training with a sword. With a sharp exhale, he swings the blade, his expression one of intense focus. He is determined not to waste a moment. As he practices, Lil approaches from behind, asking if he isn't going to rest. Ryu smiles, explaining that he has to keep moving or he'll get rusty, and that now is the time to take it easy while continuing his journey. His expression turns serious as he reveals his deeper motivations. He needs to get stronger to catch up to the hero. Furthermore, he feels that if Dhaka were to ever revive, he wouldn't be able to face Uka if he couldn't stop the beast. Unseen by Ryu, Uka stands nearby, holding a bottle. She has overheard his entire declaration, his desire to become strong enough to protect her. She approaches, startling him. Uka explains that her grandmother, Tiamat, sent her with provisions since he was training. Ryu, surprised by her presence and the gesture, offers his thanks. He notices Princess Uka staring at him and asks if there is something on his face. She stammers a denial before changing the subject, asking what he plans to do after receiving his reward. When he asks why she wants to know, he then reveals his intention, to find his childhood friends and resume his travels with them. Upon hearing his plan, Uka looks up with sudden resolve and asks if he could take her with him on his journey. He is taken aback, immediately questioning what the Dragon King would think. Uka insists it will be fine, explaining that her father has already said it is time for her to see the world, and she is confident he will agree if she travels with Ryu. Her earnest plea triggers a memory for him, recalling a time when she had asked him what traveling was truly like. He remembers the rest of their conversation, how she lamented that being a princess and a child gave her no freedom to leave the country, confessing that deep down, it was what she truly wanted. Back in the present, Karen excitedly declares she wants to travel with Uka too, an idea Lil supports. As Uka tries to quiet them, Ryu points out that taking a princess from her country is not a decision they can make on their own. Despite his caution, Ryu's expression shifts to one of warm resolve. He agrees that as long as the Dragon King and others approve, they will be glad to have her. Lil suggests they go speak with them directly. Before they can act, a royal attendant interrupts, announcing that the Dragon King has summoned them to the audience chamber. Uka can barely contain her excitement, clenching her fists in delight. The attendant leads them into the grand chamber where the Dragon King and Tiamat await. Apologizing for the delay, he gestures toward a large, cloth-draped object, announcing that it is Ryu's promised reward. He watches as a large case is opened with a series of clicks, revealing several long, sharp claws of varying sizes and colors, each resting in its own padded compartment. The Dragon King explains that while he mentioned Tiamat's claw, the options actually vary depending on the dragon species, so he has prepared several choices. Ryu stares, overwhelmed by the sheer number and size of the claws presented to him. To help him decide, the king details the properties of each type. He clarifies that a wind dragon's claw is light and sharp, a water dragon's is flexible and beautiful, and an earth dragon's is heavy and tough. The king adds that there are also claws from rare, unique types, and encourages Ryu to choose whichever he likes. Beside Ryu, Princess Uka and Lil gaze at the selection with wide-eyed wonder. He looks over the vast assortment, realizing that with so many claw types, each depending on the species, they all stand out, making the decision difficult. His attention settles on one in particular, a sleek black claw. As he picks it up, he notes that its size and weight feel just right, fitting his hand nicely and reminding him of the elder Fenrir's fawn. The Dragon King observes him with a knowing smile, remarking that he has a good eye. The king then reveals the origin of the chosen item. It is Tiamat's claw. Ryu is surprised to hear it came from her. Tiamat, flustered, asks the king to stop teasing her, but he continues, noting that his disciple, Ryu, seems to like a part of her. A moment later, the king's expression changes as he snaps his fingers, announcing that he has just had a great idea. His idea is a shocking one. He turns to Ryu and suggests, why not take Tiamat with you too? The proposal stuns everyone present. Ryu, Uka, Lil, and Karen all stare in disbelief. Tiamat is the first to recover, respectfully declining the offer. She explains that she has a duty to raise Princess Uka into a fine lady. The Dragon King simply smiles, commenting to himself that Tiamat was glowing with interest during Ryu's training. The tense standoff is shattered by the young princess. Uka, her expression set with firm resolve, tugs at Ryu's sleeve, declaring that the teasing has gone on long enough. She then looks up at him, her frustration giving way to a look of earnest appeal. Ryu meets her gaze, listening patiently. Turning her attention back to the Dragon King and Tiamat, Uka makes a bold declaration. With a determined shout, she announces that if Tiamat will not accompany Ryu, then she herself wishes to join him on his journey. She elaborates on her sudden request, explaining to Tiamat and the king that this is a long-held desire. She wants to see the world with her own eyes, to stand on her own feet, and insists that she cannot give up on this dream, even if her status as a princess is used as a reason to stop her. With a desperate plea, Uka bows low, begging for permission to undertake the journey. Tiamat watches her, her thoughts filled with concern. She sees Lady Uka as just a child and worries that such an adventure is far too dangerous. The Dragon King addresses his daughter, acknowledging that he understands her feelings. However, he gently questions the timing, suggesting that it might be too soon for such an undertaking and that waiting a few more years would be more prudent. Tiamat steps in to counter the king's hesitation. She states her firm opinion that Uka is more than capable, reminding him that the princess faced the formidable Dhaka and returned unharmed. She adds that with Ryu accompanying her, there should be no issue. Her argument made, Tiamat turns to the young princess. With a reassuring look, she declares her belief that they can, in fact, allow Uka to go. Uka looks up, her eyes wide with hope and surprise, whispering Tiamat's name in gratitude. The weight of the situation suddenly dawns on Ryu. He understands that whoever accompanies the princess must be responsible for her safety. A cold sweat breaks on his brow as he realizes that if anything were to happen to her, all responsibility would fall on his shoulders, potentially escalating into a major international incident. His internal turmoil is met by a sharp, direct gaze. Tiamat fixes her eyes on him, posing the critical question, can you shoulder that responsibility, Ryu? He listened as Tiamat continued her interrogation, reminding him of who acted on their own in the last battle. Princess Uka, flustered, interjected that Ryu didn't need to carry that responsibility and that she would protect herself. But Tiamat was firm, stating that if no one could truly protect the princess, they couldn't allow her to go. She instructed Ryu to answer with that fact weighing on his mind. The weight of the decision crushed him. He realized internally that, honestly, it might be too much for him to handle. Despite his internal doubt, he began to speak, uttering a simple but His hesitation caused a flicker of concern on Uka's face, while Tiamat's expression remained severe. Uka admitted that anything could happen on a journey, and because of that, she couldn't promise she wouldn't get hurt. His resolve hardened. He declared loudly that if anything happened, he would protect her no matter what. He clarified that his reason was not because she was a princess, but because Uka was their friend. In response to his heartfelt declaration, Tiamat bowed her head slightly. On behalf of all of them, she formally requested that they be allowed to go on this journey with their friend. Her formal request was punctuated by a subtle, knowing smile that hinted at her satisfaction with how events were unfolding. She then turned her attention to the throne, directly asking the Dragon King for his opinion and whether he would allow Uka's journey. Ryu, suddenly flustered, realized the impropriety of calling royalty a friend and quickly tried to apologize, insisting they meant no disrespect. The king, however, was amused. He considered that to say no at this point would be like denying everything Ryu had accomplished. With a smile, he gave his consent, announcing that he would allow Uka to go on the journey. Overjoyed, the princess threw her arms up in celebration, cheering that she could finally go. Ryu smiled, telling her he was glad for her, but then paused, adding that there was one condition. Her celebration was cut short by his words. As Uka looked on in confusion, Ryu directed a question to Tiamat, asking why she was coming too. The princess reacted with shock, exclaiming, "Grandma!" Tiamat calmly stated that she would be joining them on the journey, reminding them that she never said they would be going alone. Her declaration settles over the room. While Lil and Ruri express delight at the prospect of a livelier journey, Uka fumes at the thought of a chaperone. The Dragon King, however, finds Tiamat's presence reassuring, noting that if Uka were to cause an international incident, it could spark a war. He won't let Ryu bear that responsibility alone. With the party's composition seemingly settled, the Dragon King turns to Uka, who internally weighs her desired journey against Tiamat's imposed surveillance. He asks for her thoughts on the new arrangement, just as she realizes her freedom is already gone. Before she can answer, he shifts his focus to Ryu. He explains that while he would love to simply send them off, he actually has a request. He wants him to go to the elf village. Ryu questions the sudden request. The Dragon King clarifies that the elves and spirits live together in that village, and he has just received a message from a spirit king. The spirit monarch wants Ryu's help with a certain issue. He continues, explaining that the request is simple. Word has spread quickly about the human who defeated Dhaka, and it is Ryu's renowned strength that they are after. The specific task is to capture poachers, humans who have been hunting spirits and demi-humans in the area. The Dragon King elaborates on the delicate situation. The elves and spirits cannot directly intervene in human territory, which is why they must ask a human for help. These poachers are capturing elves for their power and selling them as slaves. Ryu understands the desperation behind such a request and contemplates his next move. His companions, however, show no hesitation. Uka, Lil, and Ruri all voice their enthusiastic agreement, declaring that facing the unknown is what makes traveling fun. They are ready to bring it on. Buoyed by their support, Ryu turns to the Dragon King. He acknowledges the difficulty of fighting his own kind, but accepts the mission without reservation. He will go to the elf village. The Dragon King gives the final directive. The village is on the south side of the Great Forest. He informs Ryu that there is no need to speak to the Spirit King directly, as the village elder will speak on his behalf. With their destination set, the party prepares to head out. As the party prepares to depart, the Dragon King, standing beside his wife, offers his well wishes. He hopes their journey will be a wonderful one, adding a specific farewell to his daughter, Uka, who looks on. In response, Ruri looks towards her mother, telling her to take care, then promises with a bright, determined smile that she will. With that, the newly formed party turns to leave. Uka, brimming with excitement, throws her arms out and joyfully shouts that she's off, eager for the journey to become even more exciting. Ryu, Lil, and Tiamat stand ready beside them, their adventure now officially underway. The adventure moves to a new stage as Ryu takes his first step into the Great Forest South, the dense foliage rustling around his feet. He and his companions, Tiamat, Lil, and Uka, with Karen flying above, make their way through the woods. Tiamat observes that the center of the forest is filled with giant trees, whose gnarled roots make the terrain difficult to traverse. Ryu expresses his relief, noting that the path should become easier once they get closer to the elf village, as it will be better maintained. He admits that it would be tough if the entire journey were this arduous. His comment draws a sharp reaction from Uka, who is visibly struggling to keep pace. With gritted teeth, she insists she can handle it, though Ryu calls her name with concern. Tiamat watches knowingly from the side. As Uka groans in exhaustion, Tiamat sternly encourages her to keep pushing, calling it training. She warns the young princess that if she's tired now, she won't keep up later. Ryu can only remark on Tiamat's Spartan methods. Lil then asks Tiamat if this is her first time in the southern part of the Great Forest. Tiamat confirms it is, explaining that high-ranking spirits usually erect barriers around the area. Surprised, Lil questions if this means they won't be able to enter the elf village. From above, Karen clarifies the situation. She states that guard spirits should be posted around the village, and if they simply mention Lord Ryu's name, they will probably be allowed to pass. Hearing this, Ryu brightens up, realizing the Spirit King might be nearby. The small cockatrice chick on his shoulder chirps in affirmation. Just then, a young elf with light hair materializes before them, floating just above the ground. The group is startled, as it's their first time seeing spirits. Ryu wonders if he came to greet them, but the elf simply holds up a hand, bidding them to wait. The spirit turns and begins to lead them forward. Watching him go, Ryu realizes the gesture meant, "Follow me," and wonders what exactly is going on. He followed the silent elf guide, a growing sense of unease settling over him. Ryu asked his companions where their guide was taking them, observing that they seemed to be moving further from their intended destination. Tiamat admitted she did not know. Suddenly, Ryu's head snapped up as he heard a human voice cry out in the distance. The sudden shout startled the group. Lil cried out Ryu's name in alarm as he stumbled, caught off guard by the desperate sound echoing through the trees. From the undergrowth, the source of the commotion revealed itself, a swarm of monstrous, giant spiders. Lil reacted with disgust, while Tiamat identified the creatures as a specific type of monster, known as conchigata. Looking ahead, they saw the spiders swarming a group of people. Karen, hovering in the air, alerted Ryu to the attack, calling out to her papa. Ryu stared at the scene, wondering why such a massive swarm had gathered in one place. Without a moment's hesitation, he declared that they had to help, regardless of the circumstances. Lil immediately affirmed her readiness, and the group charged forward into the fray. The situation was dire. One of the travelers was on the ground, letting out a terrified shriek as a giant spider loomed over him, its fangs poised to strike. In a blur of motion, Ryu's party intervened. Tiamat and Lil leaped into combat, their attacks swiftly dispatching the monstrous arachnids. Ryu stood firm, his expression focused, while their elf guide watched impassively from a short distance away. The battle ended as quickly as it began. A severed spider leg lay twitching on the forest floor, and a sigh of relief cut through the sudden silence. With the immediate danger gone, Ryu checked on the victims, asking if everyone was okay. Tiamat knelt beside the fallen travelers and confirmed that they seemed to be merely unconscious, their injuries minor. He then turned to face their guide. "Hey, you there," Ryu called out, his tone pointed. "You told me about this." The elf simply materialized beside him and, ignoring the implication, calmly asked if Ryu could please help them. As he investigated the merchant's abandoned cargo, he found the grim truth of their trade. Inside a large, locked cage, a young elf girl stared out, her expression a mixture of fear and resignation. He and Lil rushed closer, his voice filled with shocked realization. "Elves?" Lil, equally stunned, immediately asked if they were all right. After being freed, the young elf bowed deeply, struggling to find words to express her gratitude. Ryu, however, looked to their elven guide, who calmly stated that there was no need for thanks, as they had come at the request of the Spirit King. The guide then added with a gentle smile that spirits had also shown them the way. The mention of spirits left the rescued elf confused, but Ryu seemed to accept the explanation. A moment of silence passed through the forest clearing. When asked if something was wrong, Ryu quickly replied that it was nothing, though his mind was clearly racing. Nearby, the merchants began to regain consciousness. Mark sat up, clutching his head and groggily trying to recall what had happened, remembering only the spider attack. Their confusion instantly morphed into panic. The merchants scrambled away, one shouting that he didn't care about the elves and just wanted to get out of the forest. Ryu watched them flee, taken aback by their terror. In the wake of their departure, Tiamat examined items they had dropped. She held up a small bottle and a piece of cloth, her attention fixed on an unfamiliar emblem printed upon it. She presented the emblem to Ryu, observing that if it was used to identify allies, it must belong to a larger organization than they had expected. He confirmed he had never seen the design before. As the group stood together amidst the tall grass, Tiamat voiced the grim implication. The existence of a formal emblem suggested they could be dealing with a criminal guild, or perhaps even nobles. With the rescued elves now under his protection, Ryu takes command, urging his party to move quickly toward the village to speak with the elf elder. He establishes a protective formation, ordering the elves to stay together in the center, as he knows they need to gather more information. His group follows the order, moving as a cohesive unit through the dense forest, with Ryu and his companions forming a protective perimeter around the freed captives. The elf guide walks with a heavy heart, expressing his disbelief that humans could be responsible for such acts. Beside him, one of the rescued elven women confirms their fears, stating that 4 women and 2 children were specifically targeted and kidnapped. Sensing his distress, Lil offers a word of encouragement, telling the guide they are almost there. She reaffirms their purpose. They must catch the poachers and uncover the main source of the operation to bring safety back to the spirits and elves. He then points forward, indicating their destination is just past a thicket of bushes ahead. Emerging from the foliage, they gaze upon a tranquil village nestled within the ancient forest. With a sense of relief and belonging, the elf guide announces, "This is our hometown." As the party enters the village, an elderly elf rushes towards them, crying out the name, Ellen. The guide acknowledges the small spirit messenger with a word of thanks, while Ryu and Lil observe their arrival at the elven settlement. The elder pulls the young elf, Ellen, into a tight embrace, overwhelmed with relief that she is safe. He confesses how worried he was that she, too, had been taken. Watching the heartfelt reunion, Ryu quietly reflects on the meaning of family. Turning his attention from Ellen, the elder faces Ryu, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you so much, human," he says. Ryu simply responds that it was only natural to help. As the elder processes the event, his hand clenching, Ellen explains that Ryu's party came at the request of the Spirit King. The elder's eyes widen in shock and recognition. "What?" he exclaims. "So you're Lord Ryu?" The elven elder, looking no older than a man in his 30s, introduces himself as Al Raysoren. He apologizes for the delay and presents his grandchild, Ellen. Ryu is taken aback by his youthful appearance, realizing that elves don't seem to age at all. The elder confirms he has heard of Ryu from the Spirit King and gestures for him to follow. He leads Ryu and his companions into a large wooden hall, where they join other elves, Lil, and Uka around a massive, circular table for a council of war. Once everyone is present, the elder announces that with Lord Ryu's arrival at the Spirit King's request, they will commence the operation to rescue their captured friends. Ryu, startled by the immediacy, questions if their plans have already progressed that far. The elder confirms with a grim expression. He explains that they have successfully tracked the poachers and discovered they are selling the elven captives to slave traders within the Elf Principality. Now that the enemy's identity is known, an operation has been planned. His voice rings with conviction as he declares the plan. They will infiltrate the mansions of the slave traders and nobles who purchase the elves and spirits, rescue their captured friends, and deliver retribution to all involved in the poaching. The sheer, aggressive simplicity of the proposed assault leaves Ryu, Lil, and Uka momentarily stunned. Ryu internally concludes that the plan is far too simple. He turns to his companions to ask their opinion, but the elder, sensing hesitation, urges them to depart immediately. As he does, you whispers to Ryu, questioning if he has truly considered the plan's flaws and noting his persistent unease. Before the elder's momentum can build, Uka and Lil both shout in unison, demanding that everyone wait. Taking the opening they've created, Ryu quickly voices his concerns. He points out that they haven't confirmed the exact locations of the abducted elves and haven't performed any direct reconnaissance on the slave traders. He declares the current plan reckless. He presses on, arguing that while they're short on time, a direct fight with nobles will invite retaliation. Furthermore, the elves who were investigating the Elf Principality haven't even returned yet, meaning they lack critical intelligence. He insists that they must plan more carefully. As he considered his next move, the elven elder's composure shattered. He cried out that their comrades were suffering, losing their dignity, anxious and unsure if help would ever arrive. He insisted they could not keep them waiting any longer. Ryu watched the raw display of emotion, seeing the other elves attempt to console their distraught elder. He understood, then, that their desperation was so great they were rushing headlong into a flawed plan. It was precisely because of their strong desire to save the elves and spirits, he explained to his companions, that they had to be even more careful. He turned back to the elder, warning that if they rushed in and failed to find anyone, it would be a wasted effort that could lead to more harm, the last thing they wanted. When the elder asked what they should do instead, Ryu confidently told him to leave it to him. His plan was audacious. As a human, he would infiltrate the slave traders by posing as a customer. The surrounding elves stared, stunned into silence by the proposal. The young elf, Ellen, immediately voiced her concern, stating that it sounded dangerous and questioning if they even had enough money for such a feat. Ryu countered, explaining he would get close to the merchants to extract information and, if needed, buy the captives back on the spot. He then addressed the financial issue, stating that if they lacked funds, they would simply make more. He elaborated that hunting large monsters in the Great Forest yields a good amount, noting that in Fall Crown, a single piece of giant boar skin sells for about 60 gold coins. With the funding plan set, Ryu asked Elder Al about any troublesome monsters nearby. The elder confirmed that poisonous giant spiders had recently been breeding in the forest, causing problems for the village. Ryu, recalling their recent encounter, assured him it wouldn't be an issue. His confidence was infectious. Declaring it was time to rescue the spirit elf and the spirits, Ryu raised his fist, rallying everyone to do their best. The entire party roared in unified agreement. Deep within the great forest, ancient trees with thick, gnarled roots stand as silent sentinels. Sunlight struggles to pierce the dense canopy, casting a dappled, mysterious light upon the forest floor. The quiet is suddenly broken. A young female elf darts through the undergrowth, letting out a startled cry as she glances back over her shoulder. Her flight is cut short as she is confronted by the elven guide. He demands to know where she has been, exclaiming that they have been searching for her. The young elf apologizes sheepishly, admitting she was curious and went to observe the rumored human. The guide expresses his frustration, telling her it's troubling when she acts on her own, before pointedly asking for her assessment. His question hangs in the air, his shadowed form conveying an intense focus as he awaits her report on the human. The final judgment comes from the Spirit King himself. The young, crown monarch declares that he believes it is acceptable, expressing his faith that Ryu will surely save their village. He looks toward the tamer, calling him a kind-hearted and brave one. "Counting on you, Tamer Ryu," the king proclaims, signaling the official start of the rescue operation.